Chapter 74. Following this, the second match began. A handsome black-robed youth and a youth wearing fiery red armor walked onto the stage at the same time. That handsome black-robed youth was precisely one of the black and white heroes, Wei Lingfeng, a genius ranked in the top 10 of the Azure Cloud Kingdom. And that youth martial artist wearing fiery red armor was a young master of some influential family in the Imperial City. Although this person had the strength of the third level of the true element realm and also had some fame in the Imperial City, he was absolutely not Wei Lingfeng's match. After all, Wei Lingfeng's strength reached the fifth level of the true element realm. The tens of thousands of spectators in the plaza had all heard of Wei Lingfeng's name before and knew his strength. Therefore, no one was optimistic about that youth wearing fiery red armor called Sun Kai-hsien. Seeing the two people each holding their treasured swords and confronting each other after ascending the stage, countless spectators started discussing. With Wei Lingfeng's strength, he doesn't need to fight at all and can definitely rank in the top 10. Yeah, Wei Lingfeng is a genius ranked in the top 10. Sun Kai-hsien is absolutely not his match. I reckon that Sun Kai-hsien can at most last 10 moves under Wei Lingfeng's hands and will be defeated. 10 moves? I think he'll be defeated in 6 moves. 5 moves? At most 5 moves? Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, Sun Kai-hsien on the stage opened his mouth to speak. His expression was very ugly, and his tone was filled with helplessness as he said to Wei Lingfeng, "Brother Wei, forget if we don't fight this match. I'm willing to admit defeat. Want to be a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate and enter the Sky Pillar sect as a disciple. It doesn't just rely on strength, it also relies on luck." No one would have thought that Sun Kai-hsien actually did not draw his sword to fight and directly admitted defeat. The crowd in the plaza immediately burst into an uproar. Countless people started discussing. Some people mocked Sun Kai-hsien for being cowardly and afraid to fight, actually directly admitting defeat without fighting. But some people felt that Sun Kai-hsien's action was wise. Rather than being defeated after exchanging a few moves, it was better to directly admit defeat. Furthermore, when everyone heard Sun Kai-hsien's words, they all understood his meaning. He also had the desire to enter the Sky Pillar sect and soar to the heavens in one bound. It was just that his luck was too bad, being drawn to fight with Wei Lingfeng. This was fate. Just as he said, wanting to be a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate to become a true dragon not only relied on strength, it also required a certain amount of luck. Deacon Han Qiusheng loudly announced the results. Wei Lingfeng won, and Sun Kai-hsien was eliminated. The two of them left the ring, respectively. The audience below the ring was still discussing endlessly. Next, the third battle began. 2 young martial artists stepped onto the arena and began to fight with murderous intent. One of the young men who used a saber was called Fan Jianren. This name brought him a lot of trouble, and he was often ridiculed and mocked by others. His opponents then made an issue out of it, mocking and insulting him without restraint in order to provoke him. The result was obvious. Fan Jianren lost his sense of propriety in his rage and was unable to display his full strength. Regretfully, he was defeated. Next, the 4th and 5th matches were carried out in order. Pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring one after another. After a fierce battle, the outcome was decided amidst the discussions and cheers of tens of thousands of spectators. The loser was miserably eliminated and left the stage dejectedly. The winner would advance to the next round and enjoy the cheers and praises of countless people. 2 hours passed. During this period, a total of 14 pairs of martial artists went up the stage to fight, and 7 of them were eliminated. Among the 7 that successfully advanced were top geniuses like Jiang Baiyu and Jian Wuxing. Finally, the 15th battle began, and it was Ji Tianxing's turn to enter the ring. His opponent was a young martial artist at the 4th level of the true element realm called Wan Silin. This person was the young master of the Imperial City's influential Wan clan. In the past, he had become enemies with Ji Tianxing, and there were grievances between them. Wan Silin was the first to jump onto the ring. Standing on a high platform, he sneered at Ji Tianxing and even hooked his finger in ridicule. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes as he walked onto the ring with the black dragon sword in hand. Instantly, the gazes of tens of thousands of spectators gathered on Ji Tianxing, and they started to discuss enthusiastically with complicated expressions. Ji Tianxing has finally entered the ring. This is his first battle. Although this fellow has recovered to the true element realm, I don't know what level he is at. Can he defeat Wan Silin? In my opinion, no matter how fast Ji Tianxing's strength recovers, it is impossible for him to defeat Wan Silin, who is at the 4th level of the true element realm. I heard that Wan Silin has a grudge with Ji Tianxing. Wan Silin will definitely defeat Ji Tianxing at all costs. Whether Ji Tianxing is a good-for-nothing or a genius who has recovered to the true element realm will be revealed soon. On the stage, Wan Silin looked at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile. His tone was filled with ridicule as he said, "Ji Tianxing, back then, you slapped me 3 times in front of everyone in the gambling house. I will never forget this grudge. Today, I will beat you down in front of the entire city and make you beg for mercy. I will avenge my humiliation." Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, "Back then, you schemed against my Ji family's disciples and made them addicted to gambling. You even instigated them to steal 1,000,000 taels of silver to gamble. I am only giving you a small punishment. I have already given your Wan family a lot of face. You want me to beg for mercy? Maybe in your next life." Ji Tianxing curled his lips and revealed a contemptuous smile. Wan Silin's eyes were filled with rage. He shouted in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. Everyone in the city is saying that you have recovered to the true element realm. I would like to see how far you can recover in a short month. You good-for-nothing Ji want to turn the tables and wash away your humiliation? You must be dreaming." Wan Silin shouted angrily. He immediately drew his sword and attacked Ji Tianxing with all his might. Swish, swish, swish. 3 streaks of sharp sword light slashed towards Ji Tianxing's 3 vital points. "We will know who is the good-for-nothing later." Ji Tianxing sneered, but he did not show any signs of drawing his sword. He used a mysterious footwork, and his figure flickered. He easily dodged the 3 streaks of sword light. "You are not drawing your sword. You are too arrogant." Wan Silin looked as if he had been greatly insulted. His eyes were filled with rage. He waved his sword again, and 5 streaks of sword light enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Tianxing's figure flickered again and again. He easily dodged the sword light again and said expressionlessly, "You are not worthy for me to draw my sword." The martial artists around the ring were staring at the battle in the ring. Their nerves were tense. Seeing Wan Silin's fierce attacks and Ji Tianxing not drawing his sword, the crowd began to whisper to each other. At this moment, when the crowd heard Ji Tianxing's confident words, they burst into an uproar. "Haha, Ji Tianxing is really arrogant. That guy is just putting on a brave front. If he is really so strong, why is he dodging and not fighting back? So what if he has recovered to the true element realm? He is still no match for Wan Silin. It seems that Ji Tianxing is only that capable. It is a fool's dream to think that he can get into the top 10 in the tournament." Chapter 75. In the arena, Wan Silin was enraged by Ji Tianxing's provocation. He did not hesitate to use all his strength and used his ultimate skill. He waved his sword and slashed out 8 rays of sword light. Gale 8 swords. 8 rays of dazzling sword light spread out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew on the arena and rolled towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. His figure flashed 3 times, and he was 10 meters away. Not only did he dodge Wan Silin's ultimate skill, but he also moved behind Wan Silin like a ghost. "It's time to end this," Ji Tianxing shouted coldly. He suddenly raised his right hand and used his palm as a knife to slash at Wan Silin's neck. Wan Silin had just used his ultimate skill and was at his weakest point. Suddenly, he heard Ji Tianxing's voice from behind him. His face was filled with fear and shock. Before he could react, his neck was hit by Ji Tianxing's palm. Bam! In a muffled sound, Ji Tianxing's palm burst out with a powerful force. Wan Silin's eyes turned black and fainted on the spot. He kicked Wan Silin's back again, sending him flying out on the spot. Wan Silin fell off the stage in a sorry state. There was no doubt that Ji Tianxing had won. From the beginning to the end, he did not even use his weapon. He defeated Wan Silin, who was at the 4th level of the true energy realm, in just 3 moves. At that moment, the entire square was silent. Tens of thousands of people looked at Ji Tianxing in shock. They could not believe this result. After a while, the crowd in the square came back to their senses and burst into discussions. How is this possible? Ji Tianxing was still a trash in the body refining realm last month. In just 1 month, he recovered to the true energy realm. Not only did he break the illusory weapon Shin formation, but he also defeated Wan Silin in 3 moves. This is unbelievable. The most important thing is that Ji Tianxing did not even draw his sword. He didn't even use his weapon. Yet he easily defeated Wan Silin. How strong is his true strength? The square was noisy. Those who were mocking Ji Tianxing and determined that he couldn't defeat Wan Silin were so ashamed that their faces and ears turned red. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. At this moment, Han Xiaosheng loudly announced the result. Wan Si was defeated, and Ji Tianxing was victorious. Only then did Ji Tianxing calmly walk down the stage under the gazes of tens of thousands of people and return to the little princess's side. The little princess had seen him easily defeat Wan Silin with her own eyes. She was so excited that her little face was flushed red. She was agitated and excited. Big brother Tianxing, you're amazing. Ha! You didn't see the reaction of those bastards. They were all stunned and dumbfounded. Just now, they were laughing at you for overestimating yourself. Now they're so ashamed that they want to die. Tianxing Gidge, I knew you wouldn't be defeated. Ji Tianxing had won, but the little princess was even happier and more excited than him. Seeing her dancing with joy, Ji Tianxing revealed a gentle smile. All right, cuckoo. There's still the 2nd round of the competition later. Whether or not you can enter the sky-bearing sect will depend on the next round. You should hurry up and recover your true essence. Okay. The little princess nodded and quickly calmed down. She silently refined the medicinal power and recovered her true essence. Following that, a few more pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring and began to compete and fight. Although the martial artists who went up the stage were all at least at the 2nd level of the true essence realm and fought with all their might, the battle was very intense. However, Ji Tianxing did not have much interest in the fighting on the stage. His eyes silently swept across the little prince, Jian Wuxing, and the black and white heroes. No one knew what he was thinking. Finally, the last battle of the 1st round began. The little prince, Ji Ling, walked up the stage with a confident smile on his face. He stood proudly on the stage. When the spectators in the square saw the little prince appear, they immediately cheered excitedly. Especially those young girls and girls, they all revealed deep admiration in their eyes and cheered for him without caring about their image. There was no other way. Ji Ling's reputation in the Clear Sky Kingdom was too resounding. He was recognized by the people as a benevolent and righteous gentleman who had both ability and integrity, who knew how many young girls and young ladies regarded him as their dream lover and wanted to marry him. Ji Ling's opponent was called Pei Qianfan. He was a genius about 18 years old and had the strength of the 3rd level of the true essence realm. Although Ji Ling's voice was extremely loud, tens of thousands of people in the square were cheering for him. However, Pei Qianfan's martial talent was extraordinary, and he was young and frivolous. He would definitely not be afraid of battle. As everyone knew, Ji Ling's innate dantian was damaged, and he was destined to be a weakling in the body refinement realm for the rest of his life. Half a month ago, he obtained a red star flower and repaired his damaged dantian, successfully reaching the true essence realm. However, only half a month had passed, and he was at most at the 2nd level of the true essence realm. It was impossible for him to reach the 3rd level of the true essence realm. No matter how monstrous a person was, it was also impossible to rise 3 levels in half a month. This was common knowledge in the martial Tao. Pei Qianfan predicted this point. That was why he was fearless and confidently drew his sword to attack. "Young prince, sorry to offend you." Pei Qianfan gave a low cry and swung his sword, slashing out 4 sword lights. His body was as agile as a swallow as he pounced towards Ji Ling. Ji Ling was immediately enveloped by the sword light and was surrounded by danger. However, his expression did not change. A gentle and confident smile still hung on his lips. When the sword light arrived in front of him, a cold light flashed across his eyes before he suddenly drew his sword to counterattack. Clang! The treasured sword was unsheathed and gave off a crisp sword hum, lighting up with a dazzling sword light. Swoosh! The piercing cold sword light drew a strange trajectory in the air. With an unparalleled speed, it instantly defeated Pei Qianfan's 4 sword lights. The crowd only heard a light ding sound and saw the treasured sword in Pei Qianfan's hand was sent flying. The treasured sword drew an arc in the air and fell below the stage. At the same time, the treasured sword in Ji Ling's hand was also placed on Pei Qianfan's neck. Pei Qianfan's figure that was as swift as the wind also suddenly stiffened and stopped. The entire audience was silent. The tens of thousands of people in the plaza all opened their eyes wide in shock, revealing thick disbelief. All the discussions and cheers came to an abrupt end. Everyone was stunned. No one dared to believe that young Prince Ji Ling's strength was actually so formidable. He actually easily broke Pei Qianfan's sword move and instantly defeated Pei Qianfan. Pei Qianfan, who was at the 3rd level of the true element realm, actually could not even block one of his sword. This was too shocking. Just how formidable was young Prince Ji Ling's strength? 4th level of the true element realm? Or 5th level? Or 6th level? Thinking up to here, countless people sucked in a cold breath, revealing fanatical worship. In the next instant, earth-shaking cheers and shouts erupted from the crowd. Countless people started discussing in high spirits. Young Prince Ji Ling's sword that seemed to be aided by a god deeply shocked everyone. The plaza was noisy to the extreme. Everyone was guessing Ji Ling's strength and realm. Only Ji Tianxing was expressionless. His eyes became more and more gloomy. Chapter 76. After Han Xiuxing announced the results of the matches, the first round of the grand competition ended. Of the 40 young martial artists participating in the grand competition, 20 were eliminated, and the 20 who won successfully advanced. Han Xiuxing ascended the stage once again and took out 20 jade lots, starting to draw lots to decide the second round of matches. Swish, 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 swish. 20 jade lots flew into the sky, transforming into streams of azure light, interweaving and dancing. Everyone looked up at that cluster of azure light, waiting for the results of the draw. To the martial artists participating in the second round of the competition, the results of the draw were abnormally important. This concerned whether they could enter the sky-bearing sect or not, and it concerned their fate. Finally, the 20 jade lots were randomly divided into 10 pairs, quietly floating in front of Han Xiuxing. He took out 2 jade lots and announced the results of the draw loudly. First match, Jian Wuxing versus Qiu Yuanwu. Second match, Ji Ku versus Northmont Bulliyuo. Third match, Wei Lingfeng versus Yin Jian. Fourth match, Ji Ling versus Wulong. Fifth match, Ji Tianxing versus Jiang Baiyu. Sixth match, Han Xiuxing consecutively drew 10 pairs of jade lots and announced the order and opponents of the 20 martial artists. Every time he finished reading the names of a pair of martial artists, it would arouse a burst of discussion from the crowd in the plaza. And when he read the 5th pair of martial artists' names, the tens of thousands of people in the plaza all cried out in surprise. No one would have thought that Ji Tianxing would actually face off against Jiang Baiyu. This battle was extremely important. The loser would be eliminated, and the winner would enter the top 10 of the grand competition and successfully enter the sky-bearing sect as a disciple. This way, between Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu, one would definitely be eliminated, and the other would enter the sky-bearing sect. This match was the battle of fate. Yet, Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu, these two people were the most discussed topics in the past 3 days. Jiang Baiyu failed to clear the formation, while Ji Tianxing successfully cleared the illusionary weapon Profound Formation. When the Imperial City's citizens discussed this matter, they would all mention Jiang Baiyu's name, using his failure to set off Ji Tianxing's success. Many people subconsciously felt that Ji Tianxing might be stronger than Jiang Baiyu. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to successfully break the formation. However, this was only everyone's guess. Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu had never fought head-on before, and now, Han Xiaoxing's random drawing had tied the two of them together. The tens of thousands of people in the square were all thinking, could this be the will of the heavens? Was it destined that the two of them would have a fated battle? Soon, Han Xiaoxing announced the order and candidates for the 10 matches, and then loudly announced the start of the competition. The two young martial artists stepped into the ring and stood 10 meters away from each other. They were facing each other with murderous intent. One of the blue-robed young men was called Qiu Yuanwu. He was a sword Dao genius with some fame in the Clear Sky Kingdom. At such a young age, he already had the strength of the 4th level of the true element realm. The other young man was dressed in black. His appearance was average, and there was a scar on his right cheek. This person was none other than Jian Wuxing, a cultivation maniac who was obsessed with swords. He had the strength of the 6th level of the true element realm. In the past, he had always been suppressed by Ji Tianxing and could only be ranked 2nd in the Clear Sky Kingdom. Now, among the 20 young martial artists, he was the #1 expert on the surface. Therefore, when Qiu Yuanwu found out that his opponent was Jian Wuxing, his heart was filled with helplessness and despair. The difference in strength between the two was 2 levels. The result of the battle was obvious. Jian Wuxing only used 5 moves and easily defeated Qiu Yuanwu. Han Xiaoxing announced the result of the battle on the spot. Jian Wuxing successfully advanced to the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. Qiu Yuanwu was miserably eliminated. He could only walk down the ring with a heart full of regret. He left unwillingly. The second round of the competition began. The little princess's opponent was Beishan Bulyuo. He was the young master of the Imperial City's Beishan aristocratic family, and was also a young genius. He was also at the 4th level of the true element realm, like the little princess. Their sword Dao attainments were very exquisite. However, the little princess unleashed her full strength in this battle, and even used her trump card. The two fought for a quarter of an hour and exchanged over 100 moves before the outcome was decided. The little princess defeated Beishan Bulyuo at the cost of 7 sword strikes. She entered the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After Han Xiaoxing announced the result, the little princess walked down the ring with a pale face. She hurriedly bandaged her wounds and consumed medicinal pills to recover her true essence. The third battle was even more exciting. Wei Lingfeng, one of the black and white heroes, and his opponent, Yin Jian, both used their full strength and displayed incomparably exquisite sword techniques, causing the tens of thousands of spectators to cheer. In the end, Wei Lingfeng defeated his opponent and obtained victory, smoothly entering the top 10. When the fourth battle began, the little prince, Ji Ling, and Wu Long stepped onto the ring. Wu Long was a youth around 20 years old. His strength had reached the 4th level of the true element realm. As for Ji Ling's strength, it was still hard to unravel. The two of them only exchanged over 20 moves on the stage, and Ji Ling easily defeated Wu Long. The tens of thousands of people in the square cheered loudly for Ji Ling's victory. The crowd erupted into discussions. Everyone did not dare to believe that Ji Ling's strength actually rose to such a degree in a short half a month. He could even easily defeat a 4th-level true element realm martial artist. This was simply too inconceivable. Ji Tianxing had been observing Ji Ling and Wu Long's battle all along. He could tell that Ji Ling was concealing his strength and did not use his full strength at all. Ling's true strength was extremely likely to have already reached the 7th level of the true element realm. If he attacked with all his might, he only needed 3 to 5 moves and could defeat Wulong. This also made Tianxing very certain that the God-seizing bead was definitely refined by Ling. After all, the God-seizing bead seized his lifetime's cultivation. After Ling completely refined the God-seizing bead, he could possess true element realm 7th level strength. Thinking up to here, Tianxing clenched both fists tightly. A hint of icy cold, killing intent flashed across in his eyes. Ling, oh Ling, the person who instigated Ling Yunfei to snatch the God-seizing bead was you. The person who saved Ling Yunfei at the Apricot Manor that night was also you. Turns out that you're the mastermind behind the scenes, the most despicable and sinister fellow. Very soon, the 5th match began. Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu ascended the stage at the same time, each hugging a treasure sword and confronting each other on the stage. Tianxing looked at Jiang Baiyu expressionlessly, his gaze cold. He did not have any enmity with Jiang Baiyu. Fighting on the stage today was also dictated by fate. But Jiang Baiyu glared at him with a cold smile on his face, his eyes surging with thick rage and killing intent. Tianxing, didn't expect that your opponent would actually be me, right? Fate is really miraculous. I really have to thank Deacon Han properly for letting you and me fight in front of everyone. Jiang Baiyu revealed a smug, cold smile, his tone filled with anger. In these 3 days, you were in the limelight, while I became everyone's laughingstock. Tianxing, do you know how much I hate you? Today, I'm going to defeat you fair and square in front of several tens of thousands of Imperial City citizens. I want to let everyone see that I, Jiang Baiyu, am the true martial Dao genius. And you just barged through the Grand Array by luck. You're absolutely not my match. Chapter 77. Jiang Baiyu's voice clearly spread throughout more than half of the square, and the tens of thousands of Imperial City citizens heard it clearly. A commotion broke out in the crowd, and many people were whispering to each other. In these 3 days, the most discussed people in the Imperial City were Jiang Baiyu and Tianxing. Jiang Baiyu had become Tianxing's stepping stone to rise again. It was reasonable for him to be so angry and to harbor resentment toward Tianxing. It was so much so that many of the cultivators in the square felt their blood boil from Jiang Baiyu's words. They also agreed with Jiang Baiyu's words and looked forward to the scene of Jiang Baiyu defeating Tianxing in public. For a moment, cheers broke out in the crowd, and many people cheered for Jiang Baiyu. On the stage, Tianxing's expression was still calm, as usual. He looked at Jiang Baiyu indifferently, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a slight smile with a hint of ridicule. Jiang Baiyu, I sympathize with you. However, this might be your fate. Jiang Baiyu's expression became even more gloomy. He glared at him with a sharp gaze and shouted, Tianxing, what do you mean by this? Tianxing sneered mockingly. Back then, when I was the #1 genius in the Imperial City, you were trampled under my feet and were not famous. 3 days ago, you failed to break through the formation, and I succeeded in breaking through the illusory armament mystic formation. It was your failure that caused the news of me recovering my strength to spread throughout the Imperial City, causing a sensation. Today, you will still be defeated by me and have no chance to enter the Sky Pillar sect. No matter in the past or now, you're my stepping stone. This is your fate. Tell me, should I sympathize with you? Hearing this, the tens of thousands of people in the square were in an uproar. Everyone revealed complicated expressions and broke out into a torrential discussion. Oh my God, Tianxing is actually so confident. Too arrogant. He's simply arrogant. The former #1 genius is back again, and he's still so confident and arrogant. If Tianxing defeats Jiang Baiyu today, then Jiang Baiyu will really be like what he said, destined to be a stepping stone. How pitiful. The deafening sounds of discussion spread throughout the square. Jiang Baiyu was so angry that his face turned ashen. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His eyes emitted a strong, killing intent. Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. I'll cripple you right now and let you know that trash will always be trash. The enraged Jiang Baiyu shouted angrily as he drew his sword and charged at Ji Tianxing. 8 golden snake swords. As soon as he made his move, he exerted all his strength and used his most exquisite sword technique. 8 golden sword lights pierced towards Ji Tianxing, attacking his vital points from all directions, enveloping his figure and leaving him with nowhere to hide. Ji Tianxing did not retreat. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He immediately activated the power of the sword embryo and displayed 6 flashes of sword chi. Swish, 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 swish. The 8 golden sword lights were immediately broken and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Jiang Baiyu's expression changed. He pounced towards Ji Tianxing again and slashed out 8 sword lights. Golden Snake Wild Dance. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. He held the black dragon sword in his left hand and performed the sword control art with his right hand, controlling the 6 flashes of sword chi to counterattack. Swish, 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 swish. The 6 flashes of sword chi instantly split into 12 flashes of sword chi. They danced and intertwined rapidly, forming a sword net. The sword net blocked the 8 flashes of sword chi and enveloped Jiang Baiyu, killing him at lightning speed. Jiang Baiyu immediately fell into a perilous situation and was forced to retreat repeatedly by the sword net. In the blink of an eye, several wounds appeared on his body from the sword chi, and dark red blood flowed out. Damn it, what kind of sword technique is this? Jiang Baiyu was shocked and furious. He swung his sword in a flurry to block the sword net. Ji Tianxing was just 6 meters away from him. He used the sword control art to control the sword net to attack and close in step by step. Jiang Baiyu did not have the strength to counterattack at all. He could not block the sword net's attack at all, let alone get close to Ji Tianxing. The tens of thousands of commoners in the square were also dumbfounded. Everyone revealed a horrified expression and erupted into disbelieving exclamations and discussions. Oh my God, what kind of sword technique is that? Why have I never heard of it before? This is too unbelievable. Ji Tianxing can actually control sword chi and form a sword net to attack. Is this something a true element realm martial artist can do? It is said that only Origin Core realm martial artists can control sword chi to attack from a distance, right? This kind of sword technique is simply unimaginable. Today is really an eye-opener. No wonder Ji Tianxing is so confident and arrogant and does not take Jiang Baiyu seriously. It turns out that he has mastered such a miraculous sword technique. He has the capital to be arrogant. Jiang Baiyu can't even break through that sword net. He can't even touch the corner of Ji Tianxing's clothes. How can he still fight? Sigh. Jiang Baiyu will lose for sure. Soon, 100 breaths of time passed. Jiang Baiyu's white robe was cut into threads by the sword chi and turned into a pile of rags. It was really not enough to cover his body. Moreover, he was covered in wounds all over. There were at least 60 wounds all over his body. Blood kept gushing out from his wounds, dyeing his white robe dark red. He had completely turned into a bloody man. Jiang Baiyu tried his best to break out of the encirclement and unleashed his full strength without caring about anything else, wanting to break through the sword net's blockade and strangulation. However, the sword net covered a radius of 3 meters. Under Ji Tianxing's control, it seemed to have intelligence and spirituality. Even if Jiang Baiyu could tear a gap in the sword net, Ji Tianxing would immediately control the sword chi to patch up the gap. In this way, Jiang Baiyu would never be able to escape from the sword net's strangulation. His injuries kept worsening. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his strength was also rapidly depleting. After 10 breaths of time, the sword in Jiang Baiyu's hand was sent flying by the sword chi and fell far away from the arena. The sword net suddenly dissipated and turned back into 6 sword chi. They floated quietly beside him and pointed directly at his head and throat. Ji Tianxing looked at Jiang Baiyu and shouted in an indifferent tone. Jiang Baiyu this is your fate. Admit defeat. Jiang Baiyu, who was covered in blood and had a bloody face, stood on the arena in a daze. His body was on the verge of collapse. He could not accept this result. Until now, he still could not believe that he had lost to Ji Tianqing. Moreover, he had lost so miserably. At this moment, the pride and confidence in his heart had been shattered by Ji Tianqing. Put down his dignity and admit defeat, and in front of tens of thousands of Imperial City citizens? Jiang Baiyu could not do it. He glared at Ji Tianqing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. He roared at the top of his lungs, "No, Ji Tianqing, I will never lower my head and admit defeat to you." Ji Tianqing frowned and said expressionlessly, "You won't admit defeat? Then I'll throw you down." As his voice fell, his figure flashed and rushed in front of Jiang Baiyu. He lifted his leg and ruthlessly kicked Jiang Baiyu's chest. Jiang Baiyu was severely injured and was already at the end of his rope. He was completely powerless to block or dodge. Bam! With a muffled sound, Jiang Baiyu was sent flying. He drew an arc in the air and fell off the arena with a plop. He rolled a few rounds before coming to a stop. He struggled to get up and glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. "Ji Tianqing, you..." The incomparable humiliation caused the blood in his body to flow in reverse. He was so angry that he trembled. He was just about to speak when he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. Chapter 78. A moment ago, Jiang Baiyu stepped onto the stage full of confidence. He threatened to defeat Ji Tianqing in public and prove that he was the genius. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing was completely unscathed, but he was covered in cuts and bruises, becoming a bloody man. He was utterly defeated. He refused to admit defeat and was kicked off the stage by Ji Tianqing. He even vomited blood and fainted on the spot. What kind of disgrace was this? The tens of thousands of commoners and martial artists in the square all witnessed this scene with their own eyes. After today, this matter would definitely spread throughout the Imperial City and the Azure Cloud Empire. Jiang Baiyu would definitely become the laughingstock of everyone. The tens of thousands of commoners in the square discussed animatedly. Everyone's eyes when looking at Ji Tianqing were filled with shock and disbelief. At this time, Han Xiuxing stepped onto the stage and loudly announced the results of the competition. The utterly disgraced Jiang Baiyu was eliminated miserably. Ji Tianqing successfully entered the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing walked down the stage and returned to the little princess's side. The little princess danced with joy, her eyes surging with thick excitement and agitation. Too inconceivable. Big brother Tianqing, what sword art did you execute just now? It's too marvelous. Ji Tianqing smiled slightly and did not explain. The little princess pulled his arm and said joyfully, "That's great. Big brother Tianqing, you finally got your wish and can enter the Sky Pillar sect. Both of us passed the competition and can enter the Sky Pillar sect. This has always been my goal and dream." Ji Tianqing understood her intentions and also knew the reason why she was so excited. He revealed a gentle smile and reached out to pinch the little princess's pretty face. "Cuckoo, we'll be senior brother and sister in the future." The little princess nodded repeatedly, her big clear eyes revealing thick anticipation. Following that, pairs of young martial artists stepped onto the stage one after another and began the crucial decisive battle. About 2 hours later, the remaining 5 pairs of young martial artists all finished their matches. The second round of the competition ended here. Han Xiuxing stepped onto the stage and loudly announced the final results. The second round of this year's grand entrance competition has ended. 10 young martial artists have successfully advanced and obtained the qualification to enter our sect. These 10 martial artists are Ji Ling, Jian Wuxing, Ji Tianqing, Wei Lingfeng, Ji Ku. Han Xiuxing read out 10 names. These 10 people would become disciples of the Sky-bearing sect. The martial artists and commoners in the square immediately started discussing noisily. Some people cheered happily, some were full of regret, and some had complicated expressions. The tens of thousands of spectators originally thought that Jiang Baiyu would definitely enter the top 10 and enter the Sky Pillar sect. After all, Jiang Baiyu was one of the top 10 geniuses in the Clear Sky Kingdom. However, no one expected that he would encounter Ji Tianxing and be defeated by Ji Tianxing. In the end, he left the arena regretfully. As for the trash Ji Tianxing, who had been ridiculed by everyone and whose strength had fallen to the body refinement realm, he had successfully obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. This was a major upset in this competition, and it exceeded everyone's expectations. In addition, there was another person in this competition that no one had expected. Young Prince Ji Ling. No one expected that Ji Ling, whose innate dantian was damaged, would suddenly become a different person. Not only did he repair his dantian, but he also defeated several fourth-level true element realm geniuses and finally obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. This was absolutely an accident. After a short moment, when the discussions in the square gradually weakened, Han Xiuxing once again announced in a loud voice. Although this year's competition has already determined the top 10 martial artists and will become disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. However, the third round of the competition will be held next to determine the strength rankings of the 10 martial artists. Martial artists with different rankings will receive different treatment after entering the Sky Pillar sect. The martial artist ranked first will receive the Sky Pillar sect's key nurturing. Han Xiuxing's words instantly ignited the hot blood in the hearts of the 10 young martial artists. Who didn't want to seize first place, become a genius that everyone focused on, and receive the Sky Pillar sect's key nurturing? This was absolutely the best opportunity to have a meteoric rise and soar to the sky in one go. The 10 young martial artists secretly clenched their fists as dense battle intent surged in their hearts. Ji Tianxing was no exception. Before participating in the Sky Pillar sect's entrance competition, he had already secretly made up his mind. Not only did he want to obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect, but he also wanted to enter the Sky Pillar sect as first place. Only in this way could he receive the Sky Pillar sect's key, nurturing, and become a peerless genius like Yun Yao in the future. At this moment, Han Xiuxing's voice boomed like a bell. According to the strength of the 10 martial artists, the Sky Pillar sect has made a preliminary ranking. The rules of the third round of the competition are rather special. There will be no drawing of lots, but a challenge system. If anyone has any objections to their ranking, they can issue a challenge to a higher ranking. If they succeed, they will replace their ranking. If they fail, they will retain their original ranking. The rules of the third round of the competition were rather simple, and everyone understood as soon as they heard it. Immediately after, Han Xiuxing loudly announced the rankings of the 10 martial artists. First place, Ji Ling. Second place, Jian Wuxing. Third place, Ji Tianxing. Fourth place, Wei Lingfeng. Fifth place, eighth place, Ji Ke. Ninth place, after Han Xiuxing announced the rankings of the 10 martial artists, the tens of thousands of people in the square were in an uproar. Everyone revealed shocked and puzzled expressions as they discussed in confusion. The young prince is actually ranked first? How is this possible? Although the young prince easily defeated Wu Long, who was at the fourth level of the true element realm, he might not be able to defeat Jian Wuxing. How could he be ranked first? The Sky Pillar sect has always been fair and just. There shouldn't be a mistake. The young prince must have concealed his strength. Ji Tianxing is actually ranked third? There's something wrong with this ranking. I feel that it's reasonable for Ji Tianxing to be ranked third. He mastered that sword net and easily defeated Jiang Baiyu. I guess they're all dissatisfied with this ranking, right? There will definitely be a good show to watch later. The discussions of tens of thousands of people converged into a torrent of sound waves that wantonly surged and spread throughout the square. The 10 martial artists also had complicated expressions. Obviously, they were dissatisfied with the ranking and were eager to issue challenges. After Han Xiuxing announced the start of the third round of the competition, someone immediately stepped onto the stage. This person was dressed in black and had a scar on his face. It was Jian Wuxing, who was ranked second. Ever since Ji Tianxing had fallen to the body refinement realm and become a cripple, he had been recognized as the #1 genius. But now, the young prince, Ji Ling, was ranked first, and he was ranked second. Among the 10 martial artists, he was the most depressed and dissatisfied. No one was surprised that he would be the first to jump onto the stage and issue a challenge. They all thought that it was natural. Jian Wuxing stood on the stage with a cold expression. He stared at Ji Ling below the stage and shouted in a deep voice, "I, Jian Wuxing, challenge the young prince. Please enlighten me." Chapter 79. When Jian Wuxing's voice spread throughout the square, everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Ling. Ji Ling seemed to have expected that Jian Wuxing would challenge him. His expression was calm, as usual. He stepped onto the arena and stood 10 meters away from Jian Wuxing. There was still a confident smile on his face. Jian Wuxing, Deacon Han's ranking is the final result. No matter how unwilling you are, it's useless. You're no match for me, Ji Ling said calmly. His tone was firm, as if he was stating a fact. Jian Wuxing's expression became gloomier. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He sneered in a low voice. "Young prince, it's too early to say that. We'll only know who's #1 after we fight. Young prince, I'm sorry." After saying that, he drew his sword and charged at Ji Ling at lightning speed. He was so fast that he left an afterimage behind him. Swoosh! It was an extremely sharp and fast sword. The tens of thousands of spectators were stunned. They held their breaths and worried for Ji Ling. That sharp and dazzling sword light was like a thunderbolt tearing the night sky apart. The young genius's expressions changed. They knew that they couldn't block Jian Wuxing's sword. However, Ji Ling's expression didn't change. He was still calm and confident. Crimson Fire Overlord Sword. Ji Ling also drew his sword. He let out a low shout and swung his sword, creating a crescent-shaped sword light. The crimson sword light surged with flames, creating surging heat waves and strong winds in the arena. Bam! The two sword lights collided with a muffled sound. Jian Wuxing's stunning sword was defeated by Ji Ling's sword. Jian Wuxing was also pushed back 5 steps. Third slash of fire waves. Ji Ling shouted again. He swung his crimson sword and chased after Jian Wuxing, slashing out 3 flaming sword lights. Jian Wuxing was surrounded by blazing flames and had nowhere to hide. He could only hurriedly block with his sword. He was shocked, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Bam! 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 Their swords collided again. Jian Wuxing was pushed back another 6 steps. Next, Ji Ling launched an attack as fast as lightning. Sword light filled the sky, and it was as violent and overbearing as a monstrous flame. Jian Wuxing was at a disadvantage. She was forced to retreat again and again. Seeing Ji Ling completely suppress Jian Wuxing, countless martial artists in the square exclaimed in disbelief. Only then did everyone realize that the little prince had been hiding his true strength all this time. Only now did the little prince show his true strength. This battle was the most dazzling battle since the start of the grand competition. Ji Ling and Jian Wuxing both unleashed their strongest battle prowess and fought fiercely on the stage. Their figures flickered like ghosts, and it was too much for the eyes to take in. Tens of thousands of spectators stared intently at the battle. They were dazzled and excited. Soon, 100 breaths had passed. Ji Ling was still full of true essence. Her movements were as fast as the wind, and there were no injuries on her body. Jian Wuxing, on the other hand, had been stabbed 5 times. Her chest, back, thigh, and arm all had a sword wound that was so deep that her bones could be seen and blood was gushing out from it. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could only helplessly admit defeat. Little prince, I'm inferior. I'm willing to admit defeat. When Jian Wuxing admitted defeat, Ji Ling withdrew his sword and revealed a confident smile. Everyone around the stage had witnessed Ji Ling's true strength. Only then did they believe what she had said. The strength rankings given by the Sky Pillar sect were basically the final rankings. It was very difficult for there to be any deviation. Jian Wuxing retreated from the stage with an ashen face. Han Xiuxing stepped onto the stage and announced loudly, Jian Wuxing's challenge has failed. The original ranking will remain. Who else wants to issue a challenge? All the young geniuses were silent. They didn't dare to issue another challenge. Wei Lingfeng, who was ranked 4th, originally wanted to challenge Ji Tianxing to take 3rd place and avenge Jiang Baiyu. However, after Jian Wuxing's failure, he was full of hesitation and didn't dare to fight. The tens of thousands of people in the square also recognized the ranking announced by Deacon Han. They all believed that Ji Ling was worthy of being the number 1 genius. However, just as the crowd was whispering and discussing, a tall and handsome black figure ascended the ring. Ji Tianxing challenged Ji Ling. Ji Tianxing walked onto the stage expressionlessly. He looked coldly at Ji Ling and issued a challenge. Instantly, tens of thousands of people focused their gazes on him. The crowd exclaimed in surprise. Oh my God! Even Jian Wuxing's challenge has failed. Ji Tianxing still dares to challenge the little prince? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him. The little prince is stronger than Jian Wuxing. He's at least at the 7th level of the true element stage. How dare he question Deacon Han's ranking? How arrogant! Ji Tianxing was once the number 1 genius. It seems that he's not satisfied with being ranked 3rd. He's still dreaming of taking back the 1st place. I bet that Ji Tianxing is definitely not the little prince's match. He'll be defeated within 30 moves. 30 moves? You think too highly of Ji Tianxing. I think 20 moves are enough. Countless people snorted disdainfully at Ji Tianxing and sneered at his misfortune. They were certain that he would lose without a doubt. Only the little princess looked up at Ji Tianxing from below the stage. She waved her little fist at him and cheered him on. Big brother Tianxing, I believe in you. Do your best. Amidst the noisy discussions of the crowd, Ji Ling walked onto the stage with a smile on her face. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a mocking gaze as his lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Ji Tianxing, so what if you've recovered your strength? Do you still think you're the number 1 genius? You'll pay the price for your challenge. I'll let you know that I'm a number 1 genius. You'll always be under my feet. Ji Ling's tone was very cold and contained a hint of killing intent. Ji Tianxing was certain that Ji Ling was the despicable mastermind behind the scenes. He was his mortal enemy. Therefore, he wasn't surprised that Ji Ling had the intention to kill him. He looked at Ji Ling with a gloomy gaze and said in an equally cold tone, Ji Ling, I'll also let you know that strength obtained by scheming is ultimately just a dream. Your confidence and arrogance will end here. As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly activated 6 sword beams and turned them into golden streams of light that attacked Ji Ling flying sword technique. Flowing light sword net. He held the black dragon sword in his left hand and formed a sword technique in his right hand. He controlled the sword beams to form a sword net that covered Ji Ling's head. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sword beams danced in the air, dragging out a long golden stream of light as they surrounded Ji Ling and attacked. Ji Ling's expression changed slightly. A hint of seriousness flashed in his eyes as he immediately drew his sword to counterattack. Scarlet Overlord's sword. He also erupted with his strongest strength and used his ultimate sword technique. He brandished more than 10 sword beams to forcefully break the sword net. Chapter 80. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ling engaged in a fierce battle on the stage. The flowing light sword net enveloped an area of 3 meters around Ji Ling, making it impossible for him to break through. Ji Tianxing maintained a distance of 5 meters from him, making it impossible for him to get close. The hearts of the people around the stage rose as they were secretly worried for Ji Ling. Everyone had personally witnessed the power of the sword net of flowing light, and they had seen Jiang Baiyu's miserable state of being covered in wounds. Everyone couldn't help but worry. Would the little prince be able to withstand the net of swords? Would he end up in a miserable state like Jiang Baiyu, with ragged clothes and blood all over his body? Ding, ding, ding. The sound of swords clashing against each other could be heard from the arena. Ji Ling's strength was indeed strong enough. She used the Scarlet Fire Overlord sword to perfection, splashing out sword lights that filled the sky. She actually blocked the majority of the sword chi's attack. Occasionally, some of the sword chi and flowing light would hit him, but when they hit his body, they would make a ding-ding-ding sound. He didn't seem to be injured at all. A moment later, Ji Tianxing discovered some clues and finally understood the reason. Ji Ling was hit by the sword chi 6 times, and her robe was cut 6 times, all on her chest and back. Through the gap in the robe, a layer of dark golden soft armor could be seen. It turned out that Ji Ling was wearing a soft armor that could block weapons. Ji Ling used the Scarlet Fire Overlord sword, using layers of sword light to protect her head and the parts that were not wearing soft armor. His chest and back were protected by the soft armor, so he was not afraid of his flowing light sword net at all. Damn it, Ji Ling is truly despicable and sinister. To actually wear a soft armor, my sword chi can't hurt him. Ji Tianxing's heart was filled with hatred, his eyes surging with a cold light. As Ji Ling blocked the flowing light sword net's attack, she did not forget to sneer at him. Ji Tianxing, so what if you have mastered this strange sword technique? I have the golden silk armor to protect me, so I'm invincible. It's impossible for you to defeat me. Ji Tianxing remained silent. His face was gloomy as he manipulated the sword net to attack. Ji Ling had the golden threaded armor to protect her, which made him feel helpless. The flowing light sword net was practically useless. After all, he was only at the true energy realm, and his sword chi was not strong enough to break through the defense of the golden silk armor. If he were to reach Tongxian realm, the might of his sword chi would be increased by at least 10 times, and he would be able to break through the defense of the golden silk armor. Thinking of this, his desire to improve his strength became even more urgent. Soon, half an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing had been controlling the flowing light sword net all this time. His true essence consumption was enormous, and his mind was also very tired. He could clearly feel that his mind and strength were rapidly depleting. He could at most last for 100 breaths of time before he was defeated by Ji Ling's sword. On the other hand, Ji Ling was still using her sword technique to block the sword net. There were only 2 wounds on her body that were neither light nor heavy. Even though the robe he was wearing had been shredded into a pile of rags by the flowing light sword net, he was still wearing the golden silk armor, so he wouldn't be in too much of a sorry state. Moreover, his true essence and physical strength were still abundant. Even if he fought for another 15 minutes, it wouldn't be a problem. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianxing could only withdraw the flowing light sword net. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Under his control, the flowing light sword net dissipated on the spot and turned back into 6 sword chi that flew back into his body. Ji Ling also temporarily stopped her attacks. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a mocking gaze and revealed a smug sneer. Why did you stop attacking? You know that you are weak and can't break through this king's defense? Or do you want to admit defeat and surrender? Ji Ling's tone was full of mockery and contempt. Ji Tianxing stared at her coldly and said word by word, "You want me to admit defeat? Are you worthy?" Ji Ling's expression became even colder, and her eyes surged with killing intent. If you admit defeat, then this king will be too disappointed. This king said that if you dare to challenge this king, then you must pay the price. This king will cripple you again and make you a cripple forever. Ji Ling's killing intense soared as he pounced at Ji Tianxing with his treasured sword. 9 flaming sword lights were unleashed as he used his trump card. Scarlet Flame, 9 waves. 9 flaming sword lights burst forth with a violent and domineering power. They surged like a huge wave and instantly enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Ling had been killed by the flowing light sword net for a quarter of an hour and had accumulated a lot of anger. At this moment, all of it exploded. This move of his was going to take Ji Tianxing's life on the spot. In an instant, the large stage was dazzled by the scarlet flames. Ji Tianxing's figure was completely engulfed by the flames, and the people below the stage couldn't see him clearly. He was like a small boat in a stormy sea that was about to be swallowed up. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing's face was calm and composed. A cold light flashed in his eyes as his right hand instantly grabbed the black dragon sword's hilt. Clang! Ji Tianxing, who had never pulled out his sword since the start of the tournament, finally pulled it out for the first time. A sword hum that was like a dragon's roar resounded and instantly spread throughout the entire square. A dazzling and cold sword light suddenly bloomed like a bolt of lightning streaking across the sky. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's body was bursting with battle intent and killing intent that soared to the heavens. His body seemed to have become incomparably tall, causing everyone to look up at him and reveal a look of amazement. He ignored the 9 flaming sword lights around him and stared at Ji Ling in front of him. He held the black dragon sword with both hands and fiercely slashed down. Clang! An earth-shattering boom erupted, causing the entire arena to tremble. That incomparably domineering and cold sword light instantly destroyed a few flaming sword lights and slashed Ji Ling's chest. Chi! The golden silk armor that Ji Ling was wearing had been sliced in half by the sword light and was sent flying to either side. The violent impact brought about by the sword light sent him flying 6 meters away. With a plop sound, he fell onto the arena. He struggled to get up from the ground and stared angrily at Ji Tianxing, who was holding the black dragon sword, with a face full of shock. How is this possible? You? Shocked and angry, Ji Ling had only spoken halfway when blood gushed out of his throat, and he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Although his golden silk armor had helped him block the sword that seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth, his internal organs had still suffered heavy injuries. Ji Tianxing stepped forward, pointed the black dragon sword at Ji Ling, and shouted angrily, "Don't admit defeat. Otherwise, I will be very disappointed." A moment ago, Ji Ling had said these words in an extremely arrogant manner, and now he had returned those words back to Ji Ling. Ji Ling's face immediately turned ashen with anger, and his entire body trembled. "You want this king to admit defeat? Dream on." He let out a furious roar and jumped up 20 feet from the ground. Holding the sword with both hands, he slashed down at Ji Tianxing's head. Ji Ling had already unleashed all his potential. This simple and crude move, splitting a mountain, could even split an elephant in half. Chapter 81. Many of the experts present could see that Ji Ling was fighting like a cornered beast, using all of his strength for the final attack. If Ji Tianxing was smart enough, he would retreat and dodge Ji Ling's attack. He only needed to delay for a while, and he would be able to easily defeat Ji Ling. However, Ji Tianxing did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. Not only did he not retreat to dodge, he even charged forward again, slashing down with the black dragon sword. Retreating and dodging was a wise move, but he wanted to meet force with force and defeat Ji Ling in a tyrannical manner. He wanted to crush Ji Ling's confidence and arrogance in a crushing manner. Heaven's splitting sword. In that instant, Ji Tianxing's entire life's strength erupted to the limit. Holding the black dragon sword with both hands, he slashed at Ji Ling with the power to split the heavens and earth. A deafening, sacred, and dignified dragon roar rang out, spreading throughout the entire plaza. The black dragon sword in Ji Tianxing's hand actually transformed into a 9-meter-long, bone-chilling black dragon phantom that slashed at Ji Ling with a loud bang. Bang! With a dull sound, the treasure sword in Ji Ling's hand was cut into 2 on the spot and sent flying. He was also sent flying 30 meters away by the black dragon phantom. He drew an arc in the air and smashed into the plaza below the stage with a plop. As he fell to the ground, dark red blood sprinkled down from the sky. It was especially ghastly under the scorching sun. Ji Ling smashed into the ground of the plaza and rolled several times before coming to a stop. He lay on the ground motionlessly. Clearly, he had already fainted. The surrounding onlookers were so frightened that they immediately retreated far away, letting out waves of screams and exclamations. The tens of thousands of spectators in the plaza had all personally witnessed the scene of the black dragon phantom sending Ji Ling flying with a single strike. Everyone was shocked until they were dumbstruck. Their faces were full of horror as they immediately roared in disgust. Heavens! What did I see just now? Was it a dragon? The legendary dragon? I saw it too. It was a huge black dragon. Too inconceivable. Ji Tianxing's sword actually slashed out a dragon phantom. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that the 7th level true energy stage young prince would be heavily injured by Ji Tianxing. The number 1 genius from back then is back. Ji Tianxing's strength is several times stronger than before. Although the little prince's aptitude and strength are already monstrous, I didn't expect that he would meet a monster like Ji Tianxing. For a moment, the tens of thousands of people in the square were boiling with excitement. Discussions rose and fell one after another, erupting like a mountain torrent, deafening the ears. Countless people looked at Ji Tianxing in horror, their eyes filled with fear and dread. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing would definitely be the champion of this year's grand entrance competition. The nickname of Trash that he carried previously was now a thing of the past. No one would ever mention it again in the future. Today, he was still the number 1 genius of the Royal Azure Dynasty. Not only that, he was even more talented and monstrous than before. The battle between him and the little prince, Ji Ling, would definitely spread throughout the Royal Azure Dynasty and become a legend that everyone would know. Drawing his sword in anger, splitting the sky with his sword, and even the shadow of a black dragon appeared. What kind of legendary event was this? Although the tens of thousands of people in the square were boiling with excitement, they were discussing noisily. But Ji Tianxing, who was on the stage, was still calm and proud. He kept the black dragon sword and looked at the little princess below the stage with a smile on his face. That smile was full of confidence and gentleness. The little princess was so excited that she danced with joy. She was so emotional that her eyes were a little wet. The former brother Tianxing is finally back. After the previous bumpy training, he is now even more talented and in high spirits. I already knew that the person I love is not a fish in a pond. One day, he will become a dragon in the 9 heavens. After a long time, the boiling noise in the square slowly died down. Han Xiaoxing went up the stage and looked at Ji Tianxing meaningfully before announcing loudly, Ji Tianxing's challenge is successful. He is ranked first. Ji Ling and Jian Wuxing's rankings will drop by 1. In this way, Ji Tianxing was ranked first, Ji Ling was ranked second, and Jian Wuxing was ranked third. Ji Tianxing walked down the stage and returned to the little princess's side. The little princess didn't care about the difference between men and women. She excitedly pulled his hands and told him about her surprise and excitement. Then, Han Xiaoxing announced that the competition would continue. However, the young martial artists were a little hesitant and did not dare to challenge him rashly. And no one dared to challenge Ji Tianxing, who was ranked first. For an entire quarter of an hour, not a single person went up the stage to challenge. So, Han Xiaoxing asked again and again. After confirming that no one challenged him, he announced the final ranking in public. This year's competition is over. The following is the ranking of the new disciples. First place, Ji Tianxing. Second place, Ji Ling. Third place, Jian Wuxing. Fourth place. After announcing the rankings, Han Xiaoxing took out 10 black cold iron tokens and gave them to the 10 martial artists. Congratulations on becoming a new disciple of our sect. Please keep your identity tokens. Please report to our sect with your identity tokens within a month. At that time, I will arrange your entry into our sect. After explaining the entry matters, Han Xiaoxing announced the end of this year's competition. Ji Tianxing, the little princess, and the others kept their identity tokens and left contentedly. The tens of thousands of people in the square were still crowded around and discussing excitedly. They did not want to leave for a long time. On the high tower beside the square, Yun Yao and the other 2 were still standing at the top of the tower and looking down at the square. Hao Meng crossed his arms in front of his chest and revealed a playful smile. He clicked his tongue and said, I didn't expect that senior brother Bai and I would make an error in judgment. Originally, with Jiling's strength, he would definitely be ranked first in the competition. I didn't expect that he would be defeated by Ji Tianxing. When we first met Ji Tianxing, he was only at the body refining stage. In just 1 month, he has grown to such an extent. How interesting. Especially that sword net secret technique he used and that dragon shadow just now. It's not simple. Hearing Hao Meng's praise for Ji Tianxing, Bai Wuchen's face darkened. He secretly glanced at Yin Yao. Seeing her thoughtful expression, he could not help but ask, Eldest senior sister, when Ji Tianxing used his sword just now, the shadow of a black dragon appeared. Is it related to the dragon's breath that you detected that day? Yin Yao remained silent and did not reply. Hao Meng scratched his head in confusion and turned to look at Bai Wuchen. Senior brother Bai, what dragon's breath? When did eldest senior sister detect the dragon's breath? Bai Wuchen just stared at Yin Yao and ignored Hao Meng's question. Hao Meng smiled embarrassedly and didn't say anything else after asking for a snub. After a while, Yin Yao put away her thoughtful expression and said indifferently, Junior brother Bai, junior brother Hao, go and meet up with the 2 deacons. See if there's anything else that needs to be done. We should return to the sect in 3 days. After saying that, Yin Yao turned around and left the top of the pagoda. Her figure quickly disappeared into the rows of buildings. Only Bai Wuchen and Hao Meng were left standing at the top of the pagoda. They looked at Yin Yao's departing figure and fell into deep thought. After a moment of silence, Hao Meng could not help but ask, Senior brother Bai, eldest senior sister, seems a little strange. What is she going to do? Bai Wuchen frowned and said expressionlessly, Junior brother Hao, eldest senior sister has always been a loner. Her whereabouts are always mysterious. It's not your first day knowing her. But this time, eldest senior sister is most likely going to look for that G-brat. Chapter 82. Ji Tianxing rode the carriage and left the city square, heading back to the Ji mansion. The carriage passed through several streets, but suddenly stopped when it entered a tree-lined path. Puzzled, he lifted the curtain and was about to ask the coachman what was going on when he looked up and saw a woman in a white dress standing in front of the carriage. Although he could only see the back of the woman in the white dress and her long black hair that reached her waist, he could still recognize her. However, he recognized that the woman in the white dress was Yin Yao just by looking at her slim back. Ji Tianxing hurriedly got out of the carriage and instructed the coachman, Wait for me here. I'll be back soon. He walked behind Yin Yao and asked with a smile, Miss Yin Yao, may I know why you're waiting for me here? Yin Yao turned around and looked at him. She said calmly, I have something to ask you, but this isn't the place to talk. Come with me. After that, Yin Yao led him away from the tree-lined path and entered a house not far away. The door of the house was tightly shut. The courtyard was old and dilapidated, and it was covered with weeds. It was obvious that no one lived here. The courtyard was silent. The 2 of them were not afraid of being disturbed or eavesdropped when they talked here. The 2 of them stood under a big tree in the courtyard. Yin Yao then said to Ji Tianxing, Congratulations on winning first place in the tournament. You will be my junior martial brother when you enter our sect. Ji Tianxing smiled faintly and cupped his hands towards her. Then I'll thank senior sister here. In the future, I'll have to ask senior sister to guide me. Of course, he was just being polite on the surface. He didn't take it seriously. He understood that if he wanted to have powerful strength and a noble status, he could only rely on his own hard work and hard work. Moreover, he knew very well that Yin Yao didn't stop him halfway to congratulate him for winning first place in the tournament. She must have something else to say. As expected, Yin Yao looked at the black dragon sword in his hand. After pondering for a moment, she asked, Junior brother, can you let me have a look at your sword? Ji Tianxing's expression did not change, but his heart was secretly vigilant. No wonder she wanted to stop me halfway, so she was interested in my black dragon sword. Could it be that she saw through the secret of the black dragon sword? Thinking of this, he quickly smiled at Yin Yao and declined. Senior sister Yin Yao, as the #1 genius of the Tianxin region, you are naturally knowledgeable and have seen all kinds of divine weapons. This sword of mine is just an ordinary sword. It can't even enter Senior Sister's eyes. How about this? My G-clan makes a living by forging weapons. I'll go back to the mansion and get 2 swords for Senior Sister to look at before he could finish. Yin Yao calmly rejected him. No need. Of course, she could see that Ji Tianxing did not want her to look at the Black Dragon sword and wanted to deliberately change the topic. However, she would not force Ji Tianxing and said with a calm expression, "Since Junior Brother is unwilling to part with it, then let's forget about it. In addition, I will be returning to the sect in 3 days. It will take at least half a month to reach the sect from the Qingyun Kingdom. If you want to arrive earlier, you might as well travel with me." If it was an ordinary person, it would take at least half a month to reach the Sky Pillar sect. However, Yin Yao could fly thousands of miles in a day on the Spirit Crane and return to the sect in 3 days. If he could ride the Spirit Crane with his peerless beauty to the Sky Pillar sect, how pleasant and enviable would that be? If it was anyone else, they would not refuse such good fortune. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Sister, but I still have some matters to deal with at home. I will be delayed for a few days, so I won't be traveling with Senior Sister." Yin Yao nodded slightly. "All right, then you deal with your family matters first. After dealing with the mundane matters, set off as soon as possible. Don't miss the deadline. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Sister. Then I will take my leave." Ji Tianxing still maintained a smile, cupped his hands to her, and then left the dilapidated house. Yin Yao looked at his back as he left, and the corners of her mouth suddenly evoked a very faint smile. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. "The more you try to hide it, the more certain I am," she murmured to herself before leaving the dilapidated house. Ling Mansion, in a small courtyard with a quiet environment. Madame Ling was sitting under a tree, looking at things and thinking of her daughter, Ling Yunfei's death. She kept wiping her tears. Ling Sihai sat beside her and comforted her in a low voice. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the entrance of the small courtyard. A guard rushed into the small courtyard and shouted anxiously, "Family head, something bad has happened." Ling Sihai immediately turned his head and angrily glared at the guard. He shouted, "What's the matter? Why are you so panicked?" The guard quickly came to his side and respectfully reported. "Reporting to Master, this subordinate just received news that the Sky-Bearing Sect's entrance competition has ended. Damn that Ji Tianxing. He actually defeated the little Prince Ji Ling and entered the Sky-Bearing Sect as first place in the competition." Suddenly hearing this news, Madame Ling also stopped sobbing. She stared in shock and anger and shouted, "What? That's impossible. That damn little bastard. How could he enter the Sky-Bearing Sect and even win first place in the competition?" Ling Sihai also had an angry look on his face. He asked the guard in a deep voice, "Is this true?" The guard quickly nodded and said, "Of course it's true. The competition was held in the city square, and tens of thousands of people saw it clearly. Now the news has already spread in the imperial city." Ling Sihai also knew that this matter couldn't be fake. He was so angry that his face turned ashen and his fists cracked. Ji Tianxing, that little bastard. He entered the Sky-Bearing Sect as first place in the competition, so he will definitely be heavily nurtured by the Sky-Bearing Sect. Now that he has the identity of a disciple of the Sky-Bearing Sect, it will be difficult for us to make a move on him. Madame Ling was also so angry that her face turned cold, and her eyes surged with an ominous glint. "Even if Ji Tianxing becomes a disciple of the Sky-Bearing Sect, we can't let him go. No matter what, I will kill him and let him be buried with our daughter." She frowned and thought for a while. Suddenly, she thought of someone and had an idea. "Master, I have an idea. We can ask you, for help and let him deal with Ji Tianxing." "Humph. Ji Tianxing, that little bastard, does he think that he can save his dog life by entering the Sky-Bearing Sect? Wishful thinking." Ling Sihai frowned in puzzlement and subconsciously asked, "Which you are?" Madame Ling quickly explained, "Which you are can it be? Of course it's Fei Fei's cousin. Jianyu. Jianyu? Ling Sihai was startled for a moment before suddenly coming to a realization. That's right. How could I have forgotten about him? Jianyu is also a martial arts genius. He entered the sky-bearing sect 3 years ago. Now, his position in the sect must be extraordinary. Madam, I will write a letter to you now. I must deliver the letter to you. Before Ji Tianxing arrives at the sky-bearing sect. Chapter 83. On the way back to the Ji mansion, Ji Tianxing was delayed by Yun Yao. By the time he returned to the Ji mansion, it was already noon. At this time, the news of him defeating the young Prince Ji Ling and winning first place had already spread throughout the imperial city. Everyone in the Ji mansion had also heard the news. Countless people were overjoyed and very excited. When Ji Tianxing stepped into the Ji mansion, the steward had already brought many Ji family members to respectfully wait for him. Seeing that the Ji family members were in high spirits, he casually said a few words and dismissed them. After returning to the cool breeze courtyard, he immediately sent a letter to the Vice Hall Master, Mu Shan, to discuss matters. The entrance competition was over, and he had successfully won first place, becoming famous in one fell swoop. Now, it was time to resolve the Ji family's internal problems. A moment later, Mu Shan rushed into the courtyard like the wind and saluted him. "Greetings, young master." Ji Tianxing waved his hand, indicating for him to be less courteous. With a grave expression, he asked, "Mu Shan is second elder in the mansion?" Mu Shan hurriedly reported. Reporting to young master, just a quarter of an hour ago, second elder and Ji Hao secretly escaped from the imperial city. However, this subordinate has been following young master's orders and has been secretly following them. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. It's just as I expected. I had long expected that Ji Rufeng and his son would escape. Now that I am the family head, I hold the power of the Ji family. I have won first place in the competition, and I have become a disciple of the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Rufeng can no longer do anything to me. I was just about to give the order to capture him and punish his crimes in public, but he fled in fear of punishment. Mu Shan hurriedly took out a stack of papers and a small jade bottle from his sleeve and handed them to Ji Tianxing. "Young master, these are some criminal evidence that I found in the secret compartment of Second Elder's secret chamber. Please take a look." Ji Tianxing took the papers and jade bottle and carefully examined them. Those few slips of paper were the secret letters between Ji Rufeng and the young prince, Ji Ling, as well as the receipts for the secret weapon transactions. In a small jade bottle, there was still half a bottle of medicinal powder that had not been used up. It was the supplementary medicine for the energy-destroying powder. Ji Tianxing had long suspected that someone from the Ji clan had secretly poisoned his father, Ji Changkong. That was why his father was poisoned on the day the Ling clan came knocking on their door. Now that he saw this half bottle of medicinal powder, he finally confirmed that the person who poisoned him was second uncle, Ji Rufeng. The evidence is conclusive. Ji Rufeng, I'll make you pay with your blood this time. Ji Tianxing's face was filled with rage as he bellowed. He immediately ordered, "Mu Shan, leave a few experts behind to keep an eye on the managers in the mansion. Don't let them escape. Gather the men immediately. I will personally lead a team to hunt down Ji Rufeng. We absolutely cannot let him escape." "Understood." Mu Shan cupped his fists and accepted the order. He immediately left the room to gather the experts of Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianxing also hurriedly left the cool breeze courtyard. He found a chasing wind horse and prepared to set off. Currently, his father was heavily injured and was in seclusion. He would soon be heading to the Sky Pillar sect. The Ji clan would have no one to oversee the situation. If Ji Rufeng made a comeback, no one in the Ji clan would be able to stop him. Therefore, Ji Tianxing had already made up his mind to eliminate Ji Rufeng no matter what. If this internal trouble was not eliminated, the Ji clan would never have a day of peace. A moment later, Ji Tianxing led Mu Shan and the 6 experts of Shadow Sword Hall out of the Ji mansion. The group left the imperial city and chased westward as fast as lightning. Every 2 hours, Mu Shan would receive a secret message from his subordinates using swift wind birds to learn about Ji Roofing's whereabouts and news. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. The sun had already set, and the curtain of night was about to fall. At this time, Ji Tianxing, Mu Shan, and the others had already chased for more than 300 miles. They were far away from the imperial city and had entered Yuzhou. Obviously, Ji Rufeng had also discovered that someone was chasing after him. Not only did he run for his life without stopping, but he also fled into the mountains in order to shake off his pursuers. 2 hours later, Ji Tianxing, Mu Shan, and the others finally caught up to Ji Rufeng. In the darkness of the night, on top of a 1,000-zhang-tall mountain, Ji Rufeng, Ji Hao, and 4 other guards in leather armor were standing in the open space with their backs against each other in a defensive formation. The horses that the 6 of them rode had long been abandoned at the foot of the mountain. Ji Roofing's appearance was somewhat disheveled. His clothes were soaked in sweat, and his eyes were glaring angrily, flashing with a frightening light. Like the 4 bodyguards, he gripped his profound weapon saber and sword tightly and stared murderously at the Shadow Sword Hall experts around him. Ji Hao's face was ashen. He hid in the crowd with a frightened look in his eyes, trembling all over. 8 Shadow Sword Hall experts spread out and surrounded them, approaching step by step. Ji Tianxing strode into the field with Mu Shan and stopped 10 meters away from Ji Rufeng. He looked coldly at Ji Rufeng and shouted in a low voice, "Ji Rufeng, you're guilty of so many crimes. Do you still think you can escape?" Ji Rufeng stared at Ji Tianxing with a gloomy face. He pretended to be angry and shouted, "Ji Tianxing, I only went to Yuzhou to take care of family business. Why did you send people to kill me?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianxing immediately sneered and said, "Ji Rufeng, you're about to die and you still want to play dumb? You sent assassins to assassinate me. According to the Ji family's rules, assassinating the family head's legitimate son is a capital offense. You wantonly destroyed the Ji family's foundation and secretly traded large amounts of profound weapon equipment with the young prince. This is also a capital offense. Also, you colluded with the Ling family and secretly poisoned the family head. You murdered the family head. This is also a capital offense. Ji Rufeng, you've committed 3 major crimes. No matter which one, I can kill you on the spot." Ji Roofing's expression changed drastically. Deep hatred flashed through his eyes. However, he still refused to admit his crimes. He even quibbled, "Ji Tianxing, this is only your side of the story. You want to punish me? Do you have any evidence?" "Without any evidence, on what basis did you send people from Shadow Sword Hall to kill me? You want evidence?" Ji Tianxing sneered. He waved his hand and threw a stack of paper and a jade bottle in front of Ji Rufeng. "This is the evidence. Open your dog eyes and look carefully." When Ji Rufeng saw the stack of paper and jade bottle, he didn't need to read the contents to know that he had been completely exposed. His expression became ferocious as he shouted in a venomous tone, "Ji Tianxing, I underestimated you. Originally, today was supposed to be the day of your death. But I didn't expect that a piece of trash like you could rise again and defeat the young prince to take first place in the family competition. I really regret not killing you earlier. If you hadn't interfered, my plan would have been completed long ago. I would have taken back the family head position that should have belonged to me." Ji Tianxing's expression was cold as he shouted, "Ji Rufeng, all these years, even though you've run amok and wantonly embezzled the Ji family's assets, my father still didn't do anything to you out of brotherly affection. My father treated you like a brother, but you repaid his kindness with enmity. Not only did you plot to usurp the family head position, but you also wanted to kill us father and son. You've committed a heinous crime. Death is not to be regretted. Tonight, I will clean house for the Ji family." Chapter 84. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Ji Rufeng laughed maniacally. He roared like a madman. "Bullsh asterisk T. How am I inferior to your father? I'm the second son, and the position of patriarch should be mine. Why should I pass it to your father? It's your father, Ji Changkong, who took away everything that belonged to me. He's the one who deserves to die." Ji Tianxing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Ji Rufeng, you've lost your mind in your mind. Cut the crap. Take your head and accept your punishment." With that, he waved his hand and ordered Mushan, "Do it." Mushan accepted the order and leaped toward Ji Ruff. He waved his sword, and cold light filled the sky. The 8 Shadow Sword Hall experts also attacked, surrounding Ji Rufeng's 4 guards. Instantly, sword light flashed within a 20-meter radius, and a fierce wind blew. The sword light brought with it a violent and fierce wind that spread in all directions, sweeping up the fallen leaves on the ground and sending sand and stones flying. The dazzling cold light illuminated the dark night. Ding, ding, dang, dang. After a series of clanging sounds of swords colliding, the battle ended. Although Ji Rufeng's 4 trusted guards were the first or second level of the mystic and lightning realm, they could not withstand the attacks of the Shadow Sword Hall experts. Both sides had only exchanged a few blows before the 4 guards were killed by the Shadow Sword Hall experts. They lay on the ground, covered in blood, turning into corpses. Ji Hao was even more vulnerable. His chest had been pierced by a sword light in a chaotic battle, and he died on the spot. Ji Rufeng was still alive, but he was also covered in wounds. The sword in his hand had been snatched away, and Mushan had a sword pressed against his neck. Ji Tianxing walked in front of him and shouted with a gloomy face, "Ji Rufeng, you can say your last words now." Ji Rufeng's blood-stained face revealed a sinister smile filled with resentment. "Ha ha, Ji Tianxing, even if I die here tonight, you and your father won't live for long. You'll be buried with me sooner or later. I'll wait for you in the Yellow Springs. Someone will avenge me. Ha ha ha." With that, Ji Rufeng laughed maniacally. "Then go to hell," Ji Tianxing coldly shouted, waving his sword and piercing his throat. Ji Rufeng immediately stopped breathing. His eyes were still wide open as his body fell to the ground with a plop. The mountain peak fell into silence. The night wind blew, dispersing the smell of blood on the ground. "Deal with these corpses," Ji Tianxing ordered Mushan before walking towards Ji Hao's corpse. Ever since he caught up with Ji Rufeng and his son, Ji Hao had been trembling in fear. He hadn't said a single word, which seemed somewhat abnormal. He had specially observed Ji Hao just now and realized that Ji Hao's build and height were somewhat different from what he remembered. Ji Tianxing could not help but suspect that there was something wrong with this Ji Hao. He came to the side of Ji Hao's corpse and used his sword to pry open the hair, covering his face, carefully observing Ji Hao's face. After a while, Ji Tianxing suddenly noticed something and frowned. Mushan, check Ji Hao's body and see if he was in disguise. Mushan immediately understood what he meant and hurriedly squatted down to examine Ji Hao's face. He stretched out 2 fingers and searched Ji Hao's face for a while before ripping off a human skin mask. Instantly, a dark and ordinary face appeared in front of everyone. Ji Tianxing looked at the unfamiliar face with a cold glint in his eyes. He said hatefully, "It really is a substitute. Damn that Ji Rufeng, what a scheming old fox. He had already found someone to disguise himself as Ji Hao and fooled us all." Mushan knelt down on one knee in shame and apologized to Ji Tianxing. "Young master, it is my negligence. I was careless and was fooled by a substitute, allowing Ji Hao to escape. Young master, please allow me to redeem myself. I will immediately send people to investigate. We must capture Ji Hao." Ji Tianxing thought for a while and nodded. "This matter cannot be delayed. Send people to investigate immediately. Remember, capture him alive." "Yes, young master." Mushan cupped his fists and immediately ordered the experts of the Shadow Sword Hall to start the operation. After he passed down the order and arranged the men, the corpses on the mountain peak were also dealt with. Ji Tianxing led everyone away from the mountain peak and returned to the imperial city. The next day, noon, the Ji Mansion's main hall. Ji Tianxing sat on the seat of the patriarch. Today, he was going to clean up the internal problems and reorganize the Ji family. Mushan stood beside him with a sword in his hand, looking like a murderous god. On both sides of the main hall sat Grand Elder Ji Dajiang, from managers with different surnames, and a few elders and elders of the Ji family. Third Elder Ji Changhe and 5 other managers with the surname G were forced to kneel in the middle of the main hall by the experts of the Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianxing took out all kinds of evidence and listed the crimes of the 5 managers with the surname G. Then, he announced the punishment in front of everyone. Remove the 5 managers with the surname G from their positions and confiscate all their family assets. Then, all 5 of them will be expelled from the G family, and their names will be erased from the genealogy. From now on, these 5 people would no longer be the powerful managers of the G family. They would be reduced to penniless paupers. Moreover, they would be expelled from the G family, and their names would be erased from the genealogy. Even after death, they would not be able to enter the G family's ancestral hall. To them, this was undoubtedly the most reasonable punishment. Ji Tianxing's announcement was like a bolt from the blue to the 5 managers with the surname G. They were dumbfounded on the spot. After regaining their senses, the 5 managers beat their chests and stamped their feet. They repeatedly kowtowed and begged Ji Tianxing to be lenient and forgive them. There were even 2 managers who wailed in front of everyone and slapped themselves in front of Ji Tianxing to express their remorse. However, what happened in the main hall a few days ago was still vivid in his mind. How could Ji Tianxing forgive them? At that time, these 5 managers had helped Ji Tianxing seize power and put pressure on Ji Tianxing. How repulsive were their faces. Now that things had progressed to this point, even if they wept bitterly and begged for mercy and repented, Ji Tianxing would not be merciful. After dealing with the 5 managers with the surname Ji Tianxing dealt with the 3rd uncle, Ji Changhe. 3rd elder Ji Changhe colluded with 2nd elder Ji Rufeng to embezzle the Ji family's assets and fill their own pockets. They committed all kinds of evil deeds. Ji Changhe, since you are my father's biological brother, I will give you a lighter punishment. From today onwards, Ji Changhe will be stripped of all his positions and will not interfere in any of the Ji family's matters. Furthermore, Ji Changhe will be imprisoned in the long bamboo courtyard. He will not be able to take a step out of the courtyard for the rest of his life. If Ji Changhe violates the above punishment in the slightest, he will be executed on the spot. After announcing the punishment, Ji Tianxing stared coldly at Ji Changhe and asked, Ji Changhe, do you have anything else to say? The current Ji Changhe did not have the arrogant and complacent attitude he had a few days ago. His hair was disheveled, and he cut a sorry figure. His empty eyes were filled with despair and anger. He raised his head to look at Ji Tianxing and sneered with a sinister expression. Ha! Ji Tianxing, the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. I have nothing to say. I just didn't think that 2nd brother, and I would have underestimated you. You are only a 17-year-old youth, but your methods are more decisive and ruthless than your father's. Chapter 85. After dealing with Ji Changhe and the 5 Ji clan heads, the internal strife of the Ji clan was finally completely eliminated. Ji Tianxing had avenged himself and his father, and also completed his father's task of protecting the Ji clan's 100 years of foundation. Of course, the removal of the 2 elders and the 5 clan heads would temporarily affect the Ji clan's businesses and properties. Ji Tianxing did not have many people under his command, only the Shadow Sword Hall and the 4 clan heads with different surnames. He had no choice but to carry out his duties as the clan head, working hard every day for the Ji clan's businesses and properties, formulating various plans, and finding ways to restore the Ji clan's businesses. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, he was unusually busy. In order to quell the aftermath of the Ji clan's internal strife, it could be said that he was mentally and physically exhausted. Fortunately, the Ji clan's properties covered more than half of the imperial Qing dynasty, and there were many capable people under his command. He promoted a few trustworthy new clan heads and formulated several plans and rules based on the Ji clan's current situation, and finally stabilized the Ji clan's turbulent situation. According to his estimation, the Ji clan would return to normal in at most a month, and would be as prosperous as before. Early in the morning, Ji Tianxing woke up and was washing up when Hanor's voice came from outside his room. Eldest young master, Master has just finished his closed-door training, and he wants you to see him. In, I'll go now. Ji Tianxing responded and quickly walked out of Qingfeng Courtyard, heading towards his father's residence. When he arrived at Sanchong Courtyard, Ji Tianxing just entered the room and saw his father sitting by the bed, talking to Mu Shan in a low voice. Seeing him enter the room, Ji Changkong immediately revealed a gratified smile and waved to him. Tianxing, come over quickly. Seeing that his father's complexion had recovered, Ji Tianxing felt a little comforted. He quickly went forward and bowed, asking with concern, Father, you've been in closed-door training for a few days. How are your injuries? Ji Changkong nodded slightly and said in a calm tone, the poison of the energy-destroying powder has been mostly removed. Father's injuries have stabilized, and there are no major problems for the time being. Only then did Ji Tianxing feel relieved. He smiled and said, Father, many things have happened in the manor while you were recuperating in seclusion. Let me tell you slowly. Ji Changkong shook his head and said with a smile, Tianxing, Mu Shan has told me everything that has happened in the past few days. I really didn't expect that you would actually recover your strength, pass the test of the family's forbidden area, and succeed as the family's patriarch. He even passed the Sky Pillar Sex competition and won first place. That's great. I already knew that you wouldn't disappoint me. You would protect the Ji family's 100 years of foundation and rise again, becoming famous throughout the world. Speaking up to this point, Ji Changkong's emotions were somewhat agitated. His heart was filled with deep shock. Ji Tianxing being able to pass the test of the family's forbidden area had already surprised him. When he entered the family's forbidden area, he was at the 6th stage of the Tongxian realm, but he was still beaten black and blue by the Black Dragon. He only managed to obtain the blue crystal after a close shave with death. Not only did Ji Tianxing pass the test, but he also wiped away his shame in the Sky Pillar Sex entrance competition and won first place, becoming famous throughout the Imperial Azure dynasty. As a father, how could he not feel proud of his son? In addition, Ji Tianxing was able to control the huge Ji family at the age of 17. He even used thunderous methods to eliminate the Ji family's internal problems. This made Ji Changkong feel even more incredulous. Seeing his father's emotions and amazement, Ji Tianxing smiled and said with concern, Father, although there are some unavoidable disturbances in the family's property and business after I eliminated the internal problems, I have already made arrangements. The current situation has already stabilized. At most, it will take 2 months for us to recover. Father, you're the pillar of the Ji family. During this time, you should focus on recuperating. You must recover your injuries and strength as soon as possible. Ji Changkong waved his hand and said with a smile, Tianxing, you don't have to worry about me. I know the extent of my injuries. I know that you are wholeheartedly pursuing the peak of martial arts. Your lifelong goal is to enter the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate. You don't have to worry about the future. You can go to the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate at ease. I will take care of the family's mundane matters. You don't have to worry about these trivial matters. Ji Tianxing was still worried and asked worriedly, Father, your injuries haven't healed yet. What if the Ling family makes a comeback and retaliates? Ji Changkong pointed at Mu Shan beside him and said with a smile, Just now, I had Mu Shan pass down the order to recall 16 Shadow Sword Hall experts to guard the Ji residence. With Mu Shan and the 16 Shadow Sword Hall experts, the Ji residence will be safe. The Ling family won't dare to make a move against me. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and nodded. That's good. Then I will go back and prepare. We will leave for the Sky Pillar sect in 5 days. With this matter settled, the father and son chatted for a while more before Ji Tianxing took his leave. Half an hour later, Ji Tianxing returned to the Cool Breeze courtyard. Just as he walked to the door, he heard 2 voices coming from inside the room. They were talking in low voices. Old Ji is really not a good friend. He's been busy with the Ji family's matters these past few days and hasn't made anything good for me. I have to steal food personally to eat. The one who spoke was naturally the little ice fox, Qianyu. Yes, little fox, you are still the smart one. A few days ago, I helped old Ji fight and used up a lot of energy. My body is in a terrible state. I need to eat more to replenish my body. Ji Tianxing was very familiar with this voice. It was the little black dragon's voice. Hey, little black dragon, don't eat so fast. Leave some for me. Damn it, that roasted chicken is mine. Give it back to me. Qian Yu's voice sounded again. It was unclear that she still had food in her mouth. Ji Tianxing frowned and immediately pushed open the door. He saw that the round table in the room was filled with all kinds of delicious food. There were all kinds of fresh fruits and delicious dishes, as well as roasted chicken, roasted duck, and roasted lamb legs. The food was piled up like a small mountain. Qian Yu and the little black dragon's claws were holding onto the food. They were eating heartily, grease dripping from their mouths. When Ji Tianxing walked into the room, Qian Yu was reaching out with its little claws, trying to snatch a golden roasted chicken from the little black dragon's hands. The two of them heard the door open and stopped at the same time. They turned their heads to look at the door. Ji Tianxing looked at the two of them with a strange expression. He pretended to be angry and said, "Wow, the two of you are stealing food behind my back." The little black dragon hurriedly swallowed half of the chicken leg in its mouth. Then, with a whoosh, it turned back into the black dragon sword and wormed its way into the scabbard hanging on the wall. Qian Yu hurriedly wiped the grease from its little mouth and smiled. "Old Ji, don't be angry. I didn't mean to steal food." It rolled its eyes and pointed its little claws at the black dragon, sword hanging on the wall. It said righteously, "It was the little black dragon who wanted to eat and instigated me to steal food from the kitchen. It has been complaining to me for the past few days. It said that it used up a lot of energy to help you fight in the arena that day. It even hurt its waist and needed to eat to replenish its energy." The black dragon's sword hanging on the wall swung twice. The little black dragon's sullen voice sounded. "It wasn't me. It has nothing to do with me. Little Fox, it was Hungry Fox who complained first. Hungry Fox complained first." Ji Tianxing was amused by the little black dragon's words. This sentence is concise and comprehensive, and it's accurate. Hee. Chapter 86. Seeing that Qian Yu still wanted to argue, Ji Tianxing waved his hand. "All right, stop arguing. Eat as much as you want. If it's not enough, I'll get the kitchen to send more. I'm preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate for a few days. During this time, you two should behave yourselves. We'll be going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days." After Qian Yu and the little black dragon finished eating, Ji Tianxing prepared to enter seclusion. But at this moment, Huan Er's voice came from outside the door. "Eldest young master, the little princess is here. Quickly come out and take a look." Huan O's tone was a bit strange, causing Ji Tianxing to frown. He was somewhat puzzled. He hurriedly had Qian Yu return to the 100 Treasures brocade pouch before opening the door and walking into the small courtyard. Huan Er was standing at the entrance of the small courtyard, respectfully welcoming the little princess. At the entrance of the courtyard, a delicate and cute figure wearing a light yellow dress entered Ji Tianxing's eyes. "Big brother Tianxing, I'm here." Jiku entered the courtyard with a smile as beautiful as a flower. Her footsteps were light and nimble, and it was clear that she was in an extremely good mood. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He was about to step forward to welcome Jiku. However, when he saw a large group of guards following closely behind Jiku and carrying several boxes, the smile on his face immediately turned into confusion. "Kuku, what are you doing now?" Jiku came to his side with a face full of joy. She intimately held his arm and directed the palace guards to carry the boxes into the room. "Big brother Tianxing, don't misunderstand. I'm not here to give you gifts this time. These boxes are all my luggage. I've decided to stay with you for a few days." Ji Tianxing's expression became a bit strange. "Kuku, this isn't good, is it? You're an unmarried princess, and you're coming to stay with me. If the news gets out, there will definitely be a lot of rumors." Jiku's face was full of smiles. Clearly, she didn't care about the negative effects. After the guards put down the boxes, she ordered them to leave the small courtyard. She pulled Ji Tianxing into the room. After sitting down, she smiled and said, "Big brother Tianxing will be going to the Sky-bearing sect in a few days anyway. I'm bored staying in the palace for the next few days, so I'll stay here for a few days. It'll be convenient for us to set off together. What's wrong? Big brother Tianxing, are you unwilling? Am I too abrupt and presumptuous? If Big brother Tianxing finds me annoying, then I'll just move out. As she spoke, she pouted. Her beautiful face revealed a wronged expression, and a layer of mist appeared in her clear eyes. Ji Tianxing quickly smiled and pinched her cute little face. He comforted her and said, "Cool, you misunderstood me. Why would I find you annoying? You're right. You can stay here for the time being. In a few days, we'll head to the sky-bearing sect together." Only then did the wronged expression on Ji Ku's face disappear, and she revealed a sweet smile. And I knew it. Big brother Tianxing is the best. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. Then he had Huan tidy up a room for Ji Ku and prepare a place to stay. Only the two of them were left in the room. Ji Ku leaned over to Ji Tianxing's ear and whispered, "Big brother Tianxing, I have something to tell you. This morning, people from the sky-bearing sect brought my imperial uncle out of the imperial city and set off for the sky-bearing sect." Hearing this news, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned. Little Prince Ji Ling? He actually went with the people from the sky-bearing sect to the sky-bearing sect. Jika nodded. Her clear eyes were also filled with doubt. "That's right. I also don't understand why. It's reasonable to say that you, the first place of the tournament, should be valued by the sky-bearing sect. They should be bringing you along." Ji Tianxing remained silent. His eyes were surging with thoughts. He kept feeling that something was wrong. After a moment of silence, Ji Ku suddenly thought of something. Her expression couldn't help but change slightly. She lowered her voice and said, "That's right, Big brother Tianxing, I remembered something. Previously, I inadvertently heard that the 3 disciples from the sky-bearing sect came to our Imperial Azure Dynasty not only to supervise the tournament, but also to complete a mission. They seem to be looking for someone, and my Imperial uncle is the person they're looking for. Big brother Tianxing, do you think it's because of this?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "It should be. But why is Ji Ling the person they're looking for?" Ji Ke frowned and shook her head. "I also don't understand why. Perhaps when we reach the sky-bearing sect, we'll know what's going on." Following that, Ji Ke chatted with him for a while more before preparing to return to her room to rest. Ji Tianxing hurriedly urged, "Cuckoo, I'm preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate for a few days. We'll set off in 5 days. It'll take at least half a month from the Imperial Azure Dynasty to the sky-bearing sect. The journey is long and bumpy. You should rest well these few days." Ji Ke nodded obediently to show that she understood. She bid farewell to him and returned to her room. Ji Tianxing also entered the secret underground chamber. He took out many pills and swallowed them before he began to cultivate. 2 days ago, he took the time to go to the martial arts hall and tested his strength again. Now, he already had the strength of the 5th level of the true element realm. Moreover, the sword embryo in his body was growing stronger day by day. His strength was still rapidly increasing. Ji Tianxing considered and prepared to cultivate the 3rd level of the Sword Heart Tao. He wanted to refine the 9 main meridians in his body into a sword vein. Although his meridians had been transformed by the red star flower's medicinal power, his meridians were much tougher and stronger than ordinary people. However, this was far from enough. It was difficult to support the powerful sword chi and the circulation of his true essence. Only by refining the 9 main meridians into a sword vein could he circulate his true essence more smoothly and control the sword chi more freely. In the dark secret chamber, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged in the essence-gathering array. His hands formed the sword-controlling art as he began to cultivate. The medicinal pills that he had just consumed were also catalyzed by his true essence and emitted a majestic medicinal power. The medicinal power flowed endlessly in his meridians, strengthening his true essence and sword embryo. He circulated his chi and cultivated for 9 cycles, and a day had passed. A day of bitter cultivation had increased his strength by a few notches. The sword embryo had also grown significantly. He was about to consume another medicinal pill to cultivate when his body suddenly stiffened. His consciousness was sucked into the mysterious black hole in his dantian, and into Qin Shin's tomb. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's consciousness entered a cold and dark space. He looked around and realized that he was no longer in the vast wilderness. Instead, he was under the indomitable pitch-black sword steel. The ancient sword steel that was tens of thousands of feet tall was as majestic as before. It emitted a majestic aura that could suppress heaven and earth. The 4 blood-red words on the sword steel emitted a domineering and sharp sword essence that seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. Ji Tianxing immediately understood that the sword soul, the burial of heaven, must have pulled his consciousness into Qin Shin's tomb and brought him here. Chapter 87. Ji Tianxing looked up at the ancient sword steel and asked calmly, "Senior burial of heaven, did you summon me here?" Burial of heaven's voice immediately sounded from the ancient sword steel. It was still as powerful and distant as usual. "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked again, "Senior burial of heaven, may I ask why you summoned me here?" Burial of heaven said in a low voice, "Boy, although you can cultivate the path of the sword heart and have reached the beginner level, you are still a human being. Your innate talent is limited, and you are destined to only be able to reach the 3rd level of the path of the sword heart. You will never be able to reach the 4th level. Although your comprehension is passable and your heart is firm enough, you do not have a strong enough constitution and bloodline. You are destined to not achieve much." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing could not help but frown and ask, "Senior burial of heaven, did you summon me here to persuade me to give up on cultivating the path of the sword heart?" Burial of heaven was silent for a moment before saying, "Although you are very weak and have a low aptitude, from what I know about you, you are determined and persistent. You will definitely not give up on cultivating the path of the sword heart." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a firm tone, "That's right. Cultivating the path of the sword heart is the only way for me to become stronger. I will never give up." After a pause, he looked at the sword steel with shining eyes and asked, "Senior burial of heaven, since you have pointed out my flaws, you are willing to tell me these secrets. You must have a way to solve my innate talent, right?" Burial of heaven said in a low voice, "Yes, you are very smart. Since you have successfully cultivated the path of the sword heart with a human body, you could be considered to have some connection with Qin Shin. I can help you solve your innate talent flaw. Qin Shin once stepped into the Tianshan domain and left an opportunity in the Star Ancient Realm. That's a drop of Qin Shin's divine blood sealed within the heavenly astral bead. If you can find the heavenly star bead and obtain that drop of divine blood, you'll be able to fuse with the Qin Shin bloodline and solve the flaw of your innate talent. You'll also be able to successfully cultivate the supreme sword Tao of Qin Shin." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes shone brightly, his heart filled with anticipation and desire. "Ancient Star Realm? Divine Blood? Heavenly Star Bead? Thank you, Senior Burial of Heaven. I'll remember this." He knew very well that the supreme sword Tao that the sword soul burial of heaven mentioned was not only the sword heart Tao, but also a higher level sword Tao absolute art. If he could obtain the god's blood and the heavenly star bead, not only would he be able to make up for his innate flaws, but he would also be able to cultivate a more profound sword Tao. How could he not be excited? How could his blood not boil? However, Ji Tianxing quickly calmed down as his heart was filled with worry. The ancient star realm is the most mysterious and peculiar ancient realm in the Tianshan region. Legend has it that it's a cultivation holy land created by an ancient almighty. It's like a small world. The Sky Pillar sect and the 7 top sects of the Tianshan region are all located in the ancient star realm, and they each occupy a spirit vein treasure land. With my current strength, searching for the heavenly star bead in the ancient star realm is undoubtedly like searching for a needle in a haystack. I'm afraid I won't be able to find it in my lifetime, right? The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven told me this news. Although it's exciting, it's just an illusion. It can only be a fantasy. At this moment, the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven spoke again. "Kid, aren't you going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days?" The Sky Pillar sect is in the ancient star realm. After you settle down in the Sky Pillar sect, do your best to find the heavenly star bead. If you want to master Kenshin's supreme sword Dao and become a supreme expert like Kenshin, you only have one path to take. Ji Tianxing frowned and asked doubtfully, Senior Burial of Heaven, how do you know that I'm going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days? The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven let out a low chuckle. Hee, I'm in your body. I know everything about you. Otherwise, how could you have survived in the Taiyi mountain range and even subdued that little heavenly fox? Ji Tianxing came to a realization and felt even more respect for the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven. All right, Senior Burial of Heaven, you said that Qianyu is a little heavenly fox? Can you tell me more about it? The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven said indifferently, It's just a divine beast, heavenly fox. Although it's one of a kind in this world, when I was in the upper realm, at this point, it suddenly stopped and didn't continue. In short, it's also a great opportunity for you to subdue that little heavenly fox. It will be a great help to you in the future. Since the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven didn't want to say more, Ji Tianxing didn't ask anymore and nodded to show that he understood. Thank you for your advice, Senior Burial of Heaven. Senior Burial of Heaven, you told me so many secrets today and even helped me think of a way to solve my innate talent defect. You must have your reasons. Ji Tianxing knew very well that there was no such thing as love or hatred for no reason in this world. The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven didn't have any friendship with him, but it was willing to tell him so many secrets and help him come up with ideas. It must have other motives. Sure enough, the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven didn't hide it and said truthfully, Yes, part of the reason why I help you is because you have some relationship with Kenshin. And the main reason is that I need you to grow stronger quickly and help me obtain a stronger primordial chi so that I can gradually awaken. The primordial chi I obtained from the little heavenly fox was too weak. It could only keep my soul from being destroyed, but it couldn't really awaken. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and smiled. Senior Burial of Heaven, since that's the case, then this is a deal between us. You guide me in cultivating Kenshin's supreme sword Dao, and I help you recover your primordial chi after I become stronger. How about it? The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven suddenly chuckled in a mocking tone. The sword steel also burst forth with a soaring sword intent, causing a fierce wind to blow in the sky. Ha ha! A lowly human boy dares to make a deal with me? You're really an interesting little guy. Fine, I'll do as you say. This matter was settled. The ancient sword steel burst forth with an invisible force and sent Ji Tianxing's consciousness out of Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! His consciousness returned to his body, and he opened his eyes. Star Ancient Realm, Heavenly Star Pearl, Kenshin's blood. I will never give up on the Sword Heart Dao. I will definitely find the Heavenly Star Pearl and obtain Kenshin's blood. Ji Tianxing clenched his fists and swore in his heart. After a long time, he finally calmed down and began to cultivate again. In the next 4 days, he cultivated in seclusion in the secret chamber and didn't show himself. It wasn't until the morning of the 5th day that he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret underground chamber. At this time, his strength had increased a few times compared to before he went into seclusion, and he wasn't far from True Energy Stage 6. Today was the day he and the little princess Ji Ku set off. Please add me to the bookshelf. Please recommend me and give me tips. Thank you, brothers. Chapter 88. Early in the morning, the Ji residents prepared a carriage for Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku. Other than the 2 coachmen, there were also 4 bodyguards who would escort them to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Changkong personally led the Ji family to send Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku out of the Ji residence and wave goodbye to them. The 2 carriages left the imperial city under the morning sun and headed north along the official road, kicking up a cloud of dust. Originally, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku were in a separate carriage, and their luggage was also in their respective carriages. The Ji family arranged it this way to avoid suspicion, and they also didn't dare to neglect the little princess. They couldn't let the precious little princess squeeze in the same carriage as Ji Tianxing, right? What kind of scandal was this? Where would the imperial family's face be? However, when the carriage left the imperial city, The little princess squeezed into Ji Tianxing's carriage and insisted on squeezing in with him. Her reason was very good. The journey to the Sky Pillar sect was so long, and it was too boring to sit alone in a carriage. Of course, she needed someone to chat with to relieve her boredom. Ji Tianxing naturally couldn't bear to refuse her. Seeing her smiling face and her extremely good mood, he chatted with her along the way. In the afternoon, Ji Ku was a little tired and didn't chat anymore. She lay in Ji Tianxing's arms and dozed off. Ji Tianxing naturally wouldn't wake her up. He even changed into a more comfortable position and hugged her as he quietly pondered. When night fell, the two carriages drove into a small town. Everyone found an inn to stay in and rest. Early the next morning, everyone rested well and replenished their water and food before continuing on their journey. From the Imperial Azure Kingdom to the Star Ancient Realm, where the Sky Pillar sect was located, they had to pass through two kingdoms. Fortunately, they were on the main roads of the various kingdoms, and the carriage's speed was also very fast. They could travel 500 to 600 miles a day. 3 days later, the carriage drove out of the Imperial Azure Kingdom and entered the Mao Rong Kingdom. There were many mountains and rivers in the Mao Rong Kingdom. The scenery was magnificent, and the culture was also very different from the Imperial Azure Kingdom. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku sat in the carriage and enjoyed the scenery along the way. They chatted happily. This was especially true for Ji Ku, who had grown up in the Imperial Palace and rarely left the Imperial City. She had always been curious and yearned for the outside world. Leaving the Imperial Azure Kingdom for the Sky Pillar sect was the furthest journey she had ever taken in her life. With the person she loved by her side, she could broaden her horizons and increase her experience. Of course, she was excited and happy. After 3 days of interaction, her relationship with Ji Tianxing had become more and more intimate. Although Ji Tianxing took care of her as an elder brother, she had already regarded Ji Tianxing as her lover, so she did not avoid suspicion in the slightest. Now, Ji Ku had already fallen in love with this kind of life, where he didn't have to care about other people's opinions and worldly etiquette when he was outside. She secretly prayed in her heart that it would be great if she could stay like this with big brother Tianxing forever. 9 days later, the carriage left Mao Rong State and entered the territory of Hengchuan State. As long as they crossed Hengchuan State, they would reach the ancient Star Realm. That evening, Ji Tianxing and the others entered a city called Fengyang City. The area of Fengyang City wasn't big, only about half the size of the Imperial City. However, the city was bustling with people coming and going. Even at night, it was still noisy. After all, Fengyang City was the only way to enter Hengchuan State. Many merchants from the Imperial Azure Kingdom and Mao Rong State had to pass by here to enter and exit Hengchuan State. After Ji Tianxing and the others entered Fengyang City, they stayed in the best inn in the city and rested there for the night. The inn was very big, and there were many guests eating in the main hall on the first floor. There were all kinds of people, and there were people from all walks of life. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku led 2 guards into the main hall and sat down at a table to eat. Many of the young and middle-aged men in the surroundings widened their eyes when they saw the appearance of the little princess Ji Ku. They were stunned. After all, Ji Ku was the princess of the imperial family. Not only was she born beautiful and cute, but she also had a noble and graceful temperament. Even though she was only 15 years old, she was already a rare beauty. If she were to grow up a few years, she would definitely be an outstanding beauty. The surrounding men only dared to sneak a few glances at Ji Ku, but did not dare to have any improper thoughts. When they saw Ji Ku and Ji Tianxing's manners and the guards beside them, they knew that these two were of noble status and should not be provoked. Ji Ku ignored the crowd's reaction and only had Ji Tianxing in her eyes. Following the principle of not talking while eating, she lowered her head and ate calmly. Only when she met Ji Tianxing's eyes did she reveal a cute smile. However, when the two of them were only halfway through their meal, a middle-aged martial artist dressed in a blue robe and carrying a sword on his back came to the table. This person was dressed as a guard, but his words and actions revealed a bit of arrogance. He ignored Ji Tianxing and cupped his hands to Ji Ku. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Miss, my young master would like to invite Miss upstairs for a chat. Would Miss be willing to give him the honor?" After saying that, he raised his head and glanced at the heavenly private room on the second floor. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku immediately frowned. They put down their bowls and chopsticks at the same time and raised their heads to look at the private room. In the exquisitely decorated private room, a handsome young man in a white robe was standing by the window and looking down at Ji Ku. The handsome young man was about 20 years old. He wore a jade crown on his head, and his hair was tied up in a bun. His face was fair and handsome, and his whole body exuded a confident and noble aura. When he saw Ji Ku looking up, he even nodded slightly at Ji Ku and revealed a gentle and elegant smile. If it were any other ordinary girl, they would not be able to resist his gentle gaze and smile. Moreover, he was obviously a young man of noble status and strength. Which girl would reject his kind invitation? Unfortunately, Ji Ku was not an ordinary girl. That handsome young man was destined to be disappointed. She retracted her gaze and glanced at the middle-aged guard. Her tone was indifferent as she said, "Please tell your young master that I'm not interested and don't know him. I don't want to give him the honor." The middle-aged guard's expression changed instantly. His eyes were sharp as he shouted in a low voice, "Miss, do you know who my young master is? How dare you be so merciless?" Ji Ku glanced at him disdainfully and sneered disdainfully. "Why should I care who your young master is? What does it have to do with me? Also, do you know who I am? How dare you be so rude to me?" At this moment, Ji Tianxing ordered the guard beside him expressionlessly, "Long Wu, if this person dares to speak another word, throw him out." The guard named Long Wu was actually one of the Shadow Sword Hall's experts. He was a cold-blooded swordsman at the second stage of the mystic comprehending realm. Hearing Ji Tianxing's order, Long Wu stared coldly at the middle-aged guard. His entire body was emitting a chilling, murderous aura. The middle-aged guard was so angry that his face turned ashen. However, he did not dare to fight with Long Wu in public to avoid being punished by his master. He raised his head and glanced at the handsome young man on the second floor before resentfully turning around and leaving. Chapter 89. In a private room on the second floor. The middle-aged guard stood respectfully at the door and reported Ji Ku's words to the white-robed young man. After he finished speaking, he added a few more words with anger still lingering in his voice. "Your Highness, you are the first prince of our Chongfeng nation. How honorable is your identity? It is her honor that you are willing to invite her. I didn't expect that girl to be so rude." The white-robed young man sat at the table with a wine cup in one hand and his chin in the other. There was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. He pondered for a moment and muttered to himself, "Such a beautiful, cute, and intelligent girl. It's really rare to see such a person. I have traveled all over Chongfeng, Maorong, and other countries, but I have never seen such a lovable girl. Her beauty and intelligence can almost be compared to Xian. However, she has a soft spot for that ordinary black-robed young man. What a pity." The middle-aged guard frowned and thought for a moment. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he lowered his voice and said, "Your Highness, do you want me to teach that kid a lesson? Your subordinate will capture that girl later. Tonight, your Highness can do whatever you want with her." He had done this kind of thing for the first prince before, and it was more than once. If he really wanted to do this kind of thing, he was very familiar with it. It was also because of this that he was highly regarded by the first prince and was brought along by his side. The first prince frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before waving his hand and saying, "No need. Let's put this matter aside for now. Go check how many silver notes we have with us. Prepare all the money. I will go to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion later. There will be a 10,000 spirit jade pillow in tonight's auction. It is said that this item has miraculous effects. It can regulate yin and yang qi and treat all kinds of illnesses. Xian has been tortured by extreme cold poison since she was young. If I get the 10,000 spirit jade pillow and give it to her, I think she will." The middle-aged guard cupped his hands and accepted the order. He quickly went to count the money in the luggage. In the hall on the first floor, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku continued to eat. Jiku's mood was not affected, even though he had been disturbed by a strange, noble young master. The two of them were eating when they heard the guests at the nearby tables chatting idly, and their words were mixed with words like auction and treasure heaven pavilion. Jiku listened attentively for a while and got the gist of it. She revealed an expression that was filled with interest as she said to Ji Tianxing, "Big brother Tianxing, I heard that the treasure heaven pavilion in the city is going to hold an auction tonight. This is an annual grand event. The reason why the city is so lively tonight is most likely because of this auction. Shall we go and take a look?" Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and shook his head with a chuckle. "Cool, let's not join in the fun. When we were in the Imperial City, we've seen countless auctions. This Fengyang City is far less prosperous than the Imperial City. It's just an auction. There's no point in watching it." Even though Jiku yearned for it in her heart, seeing that Ji Tianxing didn't agree, she could only purse her small lips and resentfully say, "All right, I'll listen to Big Brother Tianxing." While the two of them were talking, a handsome youth at the neighboring table had been listening to their conversation with a smile on his face. This blue-robed youth was about the same age as Ji Tianxing. He had a tall and straight figure, a handsome face, and an imposing appearance. There were also two middle-aged martial artists standing at the side of the table. They were obviously his attendants and guards. After hearing Ji Tianxing's words, the blue-robed youth smiled slightly and said to Ji Tianxing, "This brother's words are incorrect. Brother, you might not know, but this Fengyang City is a place one must pass through to enter the Hengchuan Kingdom from the three neighboring kingdoms. It's also an important place for merchants to trade. The Treasure Heaven Pavilion is a large merchant company that has businesses all over the three neighboring kingdoms. The auction that they hold every year is a top grand event for the three neighboring kingdoms. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many merchants and martial artists gathered in Fengyang City tonight." Ji Tianxing's brows raised as his eyes stared fixedly at the blue-robed youth, and he silently listened to the blue-robed youth without interrupting him. Jiku's beautiful eyes once again surged with yearning, and she was obviously slightly moved. When he saw this scene, the blue-robed youth stood up and walked over to Ji Tianxing's table to sit down. Then he lowered his voice and said, "Brother, various priceless treasures have appeared in the past auctions, and most of them are treasures of heaven and earth that martial artists yearn for even in their dreams. Supposedly, the Treasure Heaven Pavilion will take out a rare and precious treasure to auction in tonight's auction, and it's a myriad spirit jade pillow. People who suffer from diseases or yin and yang disorder can be cured by this treasure. Women can sleep on this jade pillow and maintain eternal youth and beauty. It's even to the extent that martial artists can obtain twice the results with half the effort when cultivating and swiftly increase their strength. All in all, this treasure has extraordinary origins and miraculous effects." When he heard the words eternal youth and beauty, Jiku's eyes were instantly suffused with a crystalline light, and he impatiently wanted to go experience it. Ji Tianxing's expression was still calm, and his gaze carried a sense of scrutiny as he sized up the blue-robed youth. A complete stranger had actually taken the initiative to introduce the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's auction to him, and even described it in an extremely tempting manner. He couldn't help but be vigilant and suspicious. Could it be that this unfamiliar blue-robed youth is a shill of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion? The blue-robed youth obviously noticed Ji Tianxing's suspicion as well, and he wasn't embarrassed in the slightest, and he still had a hearty smile on his face. He cupped his hands to Ji Tianxing and Jiku. Then he introduced himself. "Brother, young miss, I'm Ye Hao, the grandson of Marshal Qinquan of Maorong Kingdom." When he mentioned his grandfather, Marshal Qinquan, his face naturally revealed a proud expression. Ji Tianxing immediately understood and returned a kind smile to Ye Hao. He cupped his hands in return and said, "So it's the grandson of Marshal Qinquan. Sorry for not recognizing you." Marshal Qinquan's name was Ye Qinquan, the Grand Marshal of Maorong Kingdom's troops and horses, and also the country's #1 general. Maorong Kingdom's imperial family was weak, and the emperor was muddle-headed and incompetent, but Marshal Qinquan was the mainstay of Maorong Kingdom and was deeply respected by the people. Marshal Chinquin had fought all his life, and his military achievements were splendid, and he rarely lost. It was his iron-blooded army that protected Mao Rong Kingdom's safety for 100 years, causing the surrounding countries to be fearful. Although Qingyun Kingdom and Mao Rong Kingdom had many frictions, the people of Qingyun Kingdom still respected Marshal Chinquin. Ji Tianqing saw that Nie Hao's bearing was extraordinary, and his speech and actions were open and candid, quite having the demeanor of a descendant of a general. So the suspicion in his heart was naturally dispelled. He exchanged a few words with Nie Hao and exchanged names. Then he made an inviting gesture, asking Nie Hao to sit down and talk. After Nie Hao sat down, he opened his mouth and asked, "Brother Nie, may I ask, how do you know so much about the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's auction?" Nie Hao did not hide it and laughed at himself and said in a somewhat low tone, "To be honest, I passed by Fengyang City this time and deliberately stayed for 2 days just waiting for this auction. My father has been on the battlefield all year round to protect the territory, and he has suffered an injury that is difficult to heal for a lifetime, and he will not live for long. I heard the news that the Treasure Heaven Pavilion is going to auction the 10,000 spirit jade pillow, which can relieve my father's injury and allow him to live for a few more years. So I specially came to buy that 10,000 spirit jade pillow." Chapter 90. Nie Hao's feelings and experiences caused Ji Tianqing to empathize with him. His father, Ji Changkong, was also plagued by internal injuries and probably wouldn't live for long, so he was extremely worried about his father's injuries as well. Imperceptibly, the distance between him and Nie Hao was pulled closer. The two of them chatted for a while, and it was already 3:45 p.m. After a while, the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's auction would begin. Nie Hao stood up and bid his farewells, intending to leave the inn and rush to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion, and he invited Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku to go with him. Ji Ku really wanted to experience this grand event, and Ji Tianqing didn't want to dampen her spirits, so he nodded in agreement. The three of them left the inn and rode a carriage to rush to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion in the city. The Treasure Heaven Pavilion was located on the most bustling street in the city, and it occupied an extremely vast area. The few palaces and tall buildings were constructed with a grand and magnificent aura. When the three of them arrived at the Treasure Heaven Pavilion, the outside of the pavilion was already packed with people, and it was bustling and clamorous. Merchants and martial artists from the surrounding countries and numerous influential officials with extraordinary statuses entered the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's entrance in an endless stream. Ji Tianqing's group of 3 followed the crowd into the Treasure Heaven Pavilion, and they entered the auction venue after a short moment. The venue was an extremely spacious hall, and there was a circular high platform at the center area. It was the auction platform, and there were a few thousand seats in the surroundings. Besides this, there were over 100 exquisite private rooms on the second floor of the hall, and those were rooms that only wealthy and influential officials had the qualifications to sit in. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku only came to join in the fun and broaden their horizons, so they casually found 2 seats in the hall and sat down. Nie Hao traveled with the 2 of them, so he naturally sat close to the 2 of them, and he sat beside Ji Tianqing. Nie Hao smiled lightly and reminded Ji Tianqing before the auction began. "Brother Ji, many rare treasures will surely appear in the auction later. If you see a treasure that interests you, there's no harm in bidding for it. The rules of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion are that only gold and silver can be used. The silver notes of the surrounding countries can be used, but it can't be used as collateral." It was obviously not the first time Nie Hao had come to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion, and he was extremely familiar with the various matters of the auction. After hearing his explanation, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku had an idea in their hearts. It didn't take long for the 2,000 seats in the hall to be filled. The time of the auction had arrived, and the auction had officially begun. An enchanting woman in a red dress walked up to the auction stage in the middle of the hall. This woman was about 30 years old. She was at her most mature, seductive, and feminine age. Her face was beautiful, and her figure was very hot. Her low-collared fiery red dress revealed a towering snow-white breast, which was very eye-catching. Ji Tianqing only took 2 glances at her before he felt a pinch on his waist. His expression changed slightly as he turned to look at Ji-Ku beside him. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Kuku-yumf, Big Brother Tianxing, you're not allowed to look." Ji-Ku pouted angrily, looking adorable. Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and he hurriedly explained, "Cough, cough. Kuku, don't think too much. I just feel that the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's business methods aren't bad. Sending out such an enchanting woman to be an auctioneer will surely make a killing tonight." Niahao smiled lightly and nodded. Brother Ji is right. This woman is called Wild Rose, and she's one of the most renowned auctioneers in the Treasure Heaven Pavilion. Not only is she charming and enchanting, she's extremely skilled in stirring up the hearts of others. She frequently makes those influential and wealthy merchants that harbor ill intentions throw away money recklessly and compete for wealth here. Tianxing nodded to indicate his understanding, and he didn't say anything further. Meanwhile, Wild Rose smiled charmingly and bowed to the guests, and then she used her clear and melodious voice to welcome the arrival of everyone and introduce the auction tonight. Not only was her voice pleasant and enchanting, but she was also full of witty words. A few sentences caused the atmosphere in the hall to become lively, and it caused the blood of countless people to boil and be filled with anticipation. In next to no time, the auction officially began. The first treasure was sent up to the auction stage by 2 guards, and Wild Rose opened the sandalwood box and withdrew a treasured sword with a brown sheath from the box. She had a light smile as she introduced. The first treasure at tonight's auction is a top-grade profound artifact treasured sword called Windshadow Sword. This treasured sword was personally forged by the Windhaven Kingdom's weapons forging grandmaster, OU, and it fused with a piece of wind lightning true gold, causing this sword to possess wind, attribute spirit energy, and possess extraordinary might. Starting the auction for the Windshadow Sword now. The starting price is 5 million, and every increment must not be less than 100,000. Swordao experts. A treasured sword befits a hero. What are all of you still waiting for? Wild Rose clearly explained the origins and effects of the Windshadow Sword in a few sentences, and she did her best to incite the emotions of everyone, praising this sword to the skies. Tianxing was born into a family of weapons forgers, and he had his own knowledge and views towards his treasured sword. Every martial artist had their own innate attribute, and absorbing the spirit energy of heaven and earth to transform into true essence was also a corresponding attribute. However, the majority of martial artists' attributes were one of the 5 elements. For example, Tianxing's innate attribute was metal, and his metal attribute spirit energy was sharp and fierce. Therefore, his talent in Sword Dao was extremely high. Other than the 5 elements, there were also wind, thunder, rain, fog, and other special forces in heaven and earth. These were almost impossible for human martial artists to possess. Therefore, weapons and equipment that contained these special forces were usually priceless and extremely expensive. Although this Windshadow Sword is not bad, I already have the Black Dragon Sword. No profound artifact or treasured sword can compare to the Black Dragon Sword. Tianxing murmured in his heart, but he did not have any thoughts of bidding. Ji-Ku and Niahao were also not interested in this treasured sword. Many martial artists and dignitaries in the hall were extremely interested in the Windshadow Sword, and they all began to bid. In just a few short minutes, the Windshadow Sword was won by a Sword Dao expert for a sky-high price of more than 7 million taels of silver. Following this, Wild Rose took out the second treasure and began the auction. This time, 3 supreme-grade black-level elixirs were auctioned. They were also made by a master alchemist and had the effect of increasing one's skills and cultivation. Everyone bid one after another. In the end, these 3 elixirs were won by a dignitary for a high price of 3 million taels of silver. The auction continued. The third, fourth, and fifth treasures appeared one after another. Most of these treasures were elixirs, weapons and equipment, formations, and so on. Occasionally, there were some unique treasures that were also related to martial artist cultivation. Every treasure would be auctioned off by everyone, and in the end, it was won at an extremely high price. Ji Tianxing and the other two watched silently and did not bid. It was not until the seventh treasure appeared on the stage that Ji Tianxing's interest was piqued. He carefully observed the treasure. It was an ice dragon armor, which was also a supreme-grade profound artifact. It was said that it was forged from the scales of an ice dragon and the silk of a heavenly silkworm. This armor looked like a translucent thin shirt. It would be very light when worn, as if it was weightless. However, it was impervious to fire and water, and would not decay for thousands of years. Weapons below supreme-grade profound artifacts would not be able to break through the defense of this armor. Without a doubt, this ice dragon armor was a treasure that martial artists yearned for. Wearing it could save one's life at a critical moment. Chapter 91. Ever since the Sky Pillar Sex entrance competition, Ji Tianxing had been eager to obtain a powerful armor. At that time, the young prince, Ji Ling, had worn the golden silk armor and was in an invincible position, making his sword-light net completely harmless. If he hadn't used the black dragon sword, he really would have been helpless against Ji Ling. Therefore, after Ji Tianxing understood the effects of the ice dragon armor, he didn't hesitate to bid for it. The starting price of this armor was 4,600,000 taels of silver. There were more than 20 people bidding with Ji Tianxing. They were either martial arts experts or wealthy merchants. After a quarter of an hour of bidding, the price of the ice dragon armor was raised to 8 million taels of silver. At this time, there were still 3 people who continued to bid. It was obvious that they were determined to obtain the ice dragon armor. Ji Tianxing didn't hesitate to shout out a sky-high price of 10 million taels of silver without any change in expression, causing a commotion in the hall. Although everyone present was either rich or noble, 10 million taels of silver was still a huge sum. Ordinary wealthy merchants might not be able to take out such a sum. The 3 people hesitated for a while, but in the end, they had no choice but to give up bidding. Ji Tianxing successfully obtained the ice dragon armor, but his expression was still calm, without the slightest bit of excitement or arrogance. Niahao silently looked at Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku, already having a plan in mind. Previously, in the inn, he and Ji Tianxing had exchanged names and could be considered acquaintances. However, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku had only said their names and didn't reveal their identities. Now, Niahao saw that Ji Tianxing didn't even blink when he threw out 10 million taels of silver. Ji Ku was also indifferent to the sky-high price and didn't care at all. Of course, he could see that Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku's identities were extraordinary and not inferior to his. The auction continued. One after another, rare treasures were sent to the auction stage and then bought at high prices. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed and the auction was about to come to an end. Wild Rose announced with a smile, "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be auctioning off the last treasure of the night. This treasure is called the Myriad Spirit Jade Pillow. It is the finale of this auction. This 10,000 spirit jade pillow has a very miraculous effect." As she introduced the origin and effects of the Myriad Spirit Jade Pillow, she took out a pillow-shaped, light green spiritual jade from the sandalwood box. The jade pillow emitted a sparkling and translucent light under the light. It was covered with a layer of dense green light, appearing extremely mysterious and illusory. Not only that, but the jade pillow also emitted a refreshing fragrance, and there was also a rich fluctuation of yuan qi. When everyone in the hall smelled the fragrance and was enveloped by the yuan qi fluctuation, their spirits were shaken and they felt refreshed. Everyone was far away from the jade pillow, but they could already feel the special effects of the jade pillow. If he could obtain this item, wouldn't he be able to use it to sleep every night? Wouldn't it be even more effective and beneficial to his body? Suddenly, the people in the hall were in an uproar, whispering to each other. Many people's eyes lit up as they rubbed their palms, eager to participate in the auction. However, when Wild Rose announced the starting price of this treasure, most of the people gave up and revealed resentful expressions. The Myriad Spirit Jade Pillow's starting price is 20 million. Each increment must be no less than 1 million. For a moment, Everyone in the hall fell silent. Previously, when Ji Tianqing bid for the Ice Chi armor at a sky-high price of 10 million, it had already made everyone speechless. The starting price of this myriad spirit jade pillow was 20 million. It was definitely not something the people in the hall could afford. Many people thought to themselves that the only people who could afford this treasure were probably the big shots in the private rooms on the second floor. Ji Tianqing knew that Nie Hao had come to the auction this time for this myriad spirit jade pillow. When he heard the sky-high price of 20 million, he subconsciously glanced at Nie Hao. Nie Hao's face was calm, and there was no change in his expression. It was obvious that he was prepared. 21 million. His voice was calm as he bid. Everyone in the hall was a little surprised. They all turned to look at Nie Hao with puzzled and scrutinizing eyes. Perhaps they could not understand why Nie Hao was still sitting in the hall on the first floor when he had the money to bid for the myriad spirit jade pillow. At this moment, a few voices rose one after another from the private rooms on the second floor. 22 million, 24 million, 28 million. I bid 30 million. In a short while, the price of the myriad spirit jade pillow was raised to 30 million. Everyone in the hall had a drastic change in expression. They revealed complicated expressions and exclaimed in surprise and low voices. Nie Hao was still calm as he continued to bid. The bigwigs in the private rooms on the second floor also joined in the bidding. Another 15 minutes passed, and the price of the myriad spirit jade pillow was raised to a sky-high price of 50 million. At this point, there were fewer bidding voices. There were only two people left. One of them was Nie Hao, and the other young man's voice came from one of the private rooms on the second floor. 55 million. Hearing the young man's voice, Nie Hao frowned, and his face was solemn. He secretly clenched his fists and said in a low voice, 56 million. Ji Tianqing silently watched Nie Hao. He could see that it was difficult for him to make a bid. The price was probably about to reach his bottom line. The voice from the private room on the second floor was silent for a moment, and then it shouted again, 60 million. This item belongs to none other than me. There was no doubt that the mysterious young man on the second floor was also going all out. His voice was extremely imposing, and he wanted to defeat Nie Hao in one fell swoop. As expected, Nie Hao's body trembled. His face was extremely solemn. He pursed his lips and remained silent for a long time. In one of the private rooms on the second floor, a handsome young man in a white robe sat by the table. He supported his chin with one hand and played with an exquisite wine cup with the other. He was the one who had bid 60 million. The middle-aged guard standing beside him reminded him in a low voice with a solemn expression, "Your Highness, we only have this much money with us." He looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped. He clearly wanted to remind the first prince not to casually raise the price. The first prince took a sip of wine, and a confident smile appeared on his face. Of course this prince understands. If the person downstairs raises the price again, this prince can only give up. But this prince's momentum is like a rainbow. The person downstairs is clearly unable to do anything. Does he still dare to raise the price? Ha ha ha. There is nothing this prince wants that he cannot obtain. The middle-aged guard nodded repeatedly, and his face was full of flattery. At the same time, Nie Hao was still silent. His expression was somewhat ugly, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. But Wild Rose had already shouted, "The young master upstairs has bid 60 million. Is there anyone higher? If no one else bids, this 10,000 spirit jade pillow will belong to that young master." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and asked Nie Hao in a low voice, "Brother Nie, this item is very important to you. Why are you not raising the price?" Nie Hao smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "I used all my strength and only prepared 58 million. I thought that would be enough, but I didn't expect." Ji Tianqing had already guessed that Nie Hao was not raising the price because he did not have enough money. After hearing Nie Hao's words, he smiled slightly and took out a stack of banknotes from his sleeve. He handed it to Nie Hao. "Here is 10 million. Take it for emergency use." Nie Hao's body trembled. He looked at Ji Tianqing in astonishment, and for a moment, he did not know what to say. He never thought that this young Master Ji who he had only known for 4 hours, would be so generous to help him. This was definitely timely help. Niahao pursed his lips, and his eyes were filled with sincere gratitude. Brother G, Niahao, will remember this kindness in my heart. I will never forget it. Chapter 92. Niahao asked himself honestly, if he was asked to take out 10 million taels to help a stranger he met by chance, he might not be able to do it. It was precisely because of this that Ji Tianxing's generous help caused him to be filled with gratitude. This was the way of the world. There were many who would add flowers to brocade, but there were extremely few who would provide timely assistance. When Ji Tianxing heard his sonorous, sincere, and heavy tone, he smiled and waved his hand. It's nothing. You'd better hurry up and bid. Don't wait for Wild Rose to drop the hammer. Niahao nodded heavily. After accepting the stack of banknotes, he opened his mouth and shouted with an imposing manner, 61 million taels. Wild Rose, who was on the auction stage, was about to drop the hammer and announce that the myriad spirit jade pillow was won by the young master upstairs. When she suddenly heard Niahao's voice, her hand froze for a moment. Then she revealed an even brighter smile. This young master has bid 61 million taels. Is there a higher bid? Everyone in the hall immediately discussed spiritedly. They all raised their heads and looked at the private room on the second floor, revealing looks of anticipation. In the private room, the first prince was holding a wine cup and tasting wine with a smile on his face. He was extremely confident and originally thought that he had successfully shocked his opponent. As long as Wild Rose dropped the hammer and announced the result, the myriad spirit jade pillow would be his. But he never expected that at the last moment, the person downstairs actually followed and bid. The first prince's body immediately stiffened. His face became ashen, and his eyes surged with rage. 60 million taels was his limit. This time, he could not bid anymore. No matter how much rage and unwillingness he had in his heart, he could only suppress the rage in the bottom of his heart. He tightly pursed his lips and did not say a word. A moment later, Wild Rose announced the result loudly. The finale treasure of this auction, the myriad spirit jade pillow, was sold at a price of 61 million taels and belonged to Niahao. The first prince walked to the window with an ashen face and looked down at Niahao from above. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The middle-aged guard said in a low voice, "Your First Highness, do you want this subordinate to make a move and snatch that jade pillow?" The first prince's face was dark, and he did not speak. He turned around and walked out of the private room with an icy aura. The Treasure Heaven Pavilion's auction ended. Everyone left the auction house one after another and walked out of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion along with the surging crowd, discussing as they walked. After an entire 7 minutes, all the guests left, and the Treasure Heaven Pavilion finally quieted down. After the auction ended, Ji Tianxing, Niahao, and Ji Ku were invited into the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's parlor. Both parties exchanged the money and the goods, completing the auction transaction. Ji Tianxing obtained the Ice Chi armor, and Niahao also obtained the myriad spirit jade pillow, as he wished. The three of them put away the treasures properly before walking out of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion together. It was already the middle of the night. There were few pedestrians on the street, and the lights were dim. Just as the three of them were about to board the carriage, two people walked out from the darkness and blocked Niahao's path. The two of them were precisely the first prince and the middle-aged guard, and they had long since been waiting for Niahao outside the Treasure Heaven Pavilion's entrance. The eldest prince ignored Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku and walked straight to Niahao. He did not beat around the bush either and went straight to the point. "This, brother, I'm willing to buy your myriad spirit jade pillow at double the price. What do you think?" Niahao recognized his voice and said with a frown, "This young master must be joking. If you can offer double the price, why didn't you bid at the auction just now?" The eldest prince's expression was somewhat grim as he explained in a cold tone, "I can give you 60 million taels first. I'll send people to gather the remaining 60 million and will definitely hand it over to you within 3 days." His tone and attitude were somewhat unyielding. His body faintly emitted a domineering aura that was extremely oppressive. But Niahao was unmoved in the slightest and said in a firm tone, "The myriad spirit jade pillow is extremely important to me. No matter how much money you offer, I won't sell it." The eldest prince's expression immediately turned cold. His eyes surged with a sharp glint as he said with a cold smile, "The things that I Lu Mingyang want, there's still nothing that I can't get. Since your esteemed self doesn't know what's good for you, then don't blame me for not being courteous." As he finished speaking, the middle-aged guard behind him strode forward and rushed towards Niahao as fast as a gust of wind. He slammed his palm towards Niahao's chest. This middle-aged guard was a Tongxian realm expert. His palm flickered with a scarlet flame that contained an extremely violent power. Before the flaming palm could hit Niahao, the scorching heat caused Niahao to suffocate. His robes and hair were almost charred. With his true energy realm strength, it was impossible for him to dodge this palm. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing, who was standing at the side, suddenly drew his black dragon sword and slashed at the middle-aged guard's palm with all his might. Swoosh! The dazzling sword light illuminated the night sky. The cold sword chi dispersed the scorching flames. The middle-aged guard's expression changed abruptly. Sensing the terrifying power of the sword light, he immediately retracted his palm. The cold sword light missed and slashed fiercely onto the limestone street, creating a deep trench that was almost 10 feet long. Seeing this scene, First Prince Lu Mingyang frowned, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes. He turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing. His eyes were filled with a cold light. "Brad, it's you again." Niahao had dodged a bullet and looked relieved. He hurriedly took a few steps back and stood beside Ji Tianxing. At the same time, his two guards also rushed over. They drew their swords to protect him and stared at Lu Mingyang with murderous intent. Ji Tianxing put away his black dragon sword and stared coldly at Lu Mingyang. He sneered in a mocking tone. "Haha, previously in the inn, you already had bad intentions towards my sister. Now that the auction has failed, you want to kill me on the street and steal my treasure. I would like to know, which aristocratic family are you from? How can you be so despicable and shameless?" Niahao also glared at Lu Mingyang and shouted angrily, "Lu Mingyang, you sinister and vicious villain." Even Ji Ku sneered with disdain. "Haha, you look like a human. Unfortunately, you're a beast in human clothing. You're even worse than pigs and dogs." Lu Mingyang was scolded by the three of them in turn. He was so angry that his face turned ashen. The fury in his heart surged, and he wished he could kill the three of them. However, Ji Tianxing's sword strike made him rather fearful. Moreover, the three of them had guards with them, and all of them had extraordinary strength. Moreover, this was the entrance of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion. The matter couldn't be blown out of proportion. Otherwise, it would be difficult to deal with it. Lu Mingyang could only forcefully suppress his anger and killing intent. He glared fiercely at Niahao and Ji Tianxing. "I'll remember this grudge. The two of you wait to suffer my wrath." After gnashing his teeth and throwing down these vicious words, Lu Mingyang turned around and left with his guards. His figure quickly disappeared into the darkness. Niahao didn't send his guards to chase after them. He watched Lu Mingyang disappear into the darkness and cursed with anger that hadn't subsided. "Damn bastard. He's so arrogant. I almost fell into his trap." After saying that, he took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He turned to look at Ji Tianxing beside him and bowed sincerely. "Brother Ji, thank you for saving me just now. I owe you another big favor." Chapter 93. On the way back to the inn, Niahao and Ji Tianxing rode in the same carriage. Ji Tianxing saw his abnormal expression and guessed that he might have something to say, so he took the initiative to ask, "Brother Nia, do you have something to say?" Niahao nodded and said with a face full of guilt, "Brother Ji, I've implicated you in tonight's matter." Ji Tianxing frowned doubtfully and asked with a smile, "It's fate that you and I have met each other. Drawing a sword to help is a small matter. How can you implicate me?" Niahao shook his head gently and said in a dignified tone, "Brother Ji is righteous. I, Niahao, will remember this kindness in my heart and will definitely repay it in the future. It's just that Lu Mingyang, I'm afraid his origin is extraordinary and his background is deep. I, Nya Hao, am not afraid of his revenge. It's just that Brother Ji, in order to save me, offended him for no reason. I'm afraid there will be trouble in the future. Seeing that Ji Tianxing did not take it seriously, Nya Hao lowered his voice and explained, Brother Ji, you may not know, but the Changfeng country, which is adjacent to our Maorong country, has a first prince called Lu Mingyang. It's rumored that the first prince of Changfeng country looks talented, but in fact, he's a despicable, sinister, and unscrupulous bastard. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing suddenly understood. That guy, just now, is the first prince of Changfeng country. No wonder he's so arrogant and despotic. He's really lawless. I'm not from Changfeng country. Even if he wants to take revenge on me, would he dare to run to my Qingyan country? Ji Tianxing smiled and did not take this matter to heart. Nya Hao was, of course, not a person who was afraid of trouble. He guessed that Ji Tianxing's family background was extraordinary and his strength was mysterious and powerful, so he did not say anything more. After an hour, the three returned to the inn and went back to their rooms to rest. That night, undercurrents were surging in Fengyang City. However, the inn was safe and sound and no accidents happened. Before going to bed, Ji Tianxing took out the ice dragon armor from the 100 Treasures brocade pouch and put on after a moment of observation. As expected, this armor was as light as a feather. Wearing it didn't feel cumbersome at all, and it didn't affect his movements at all. Moreover, the ice hornless armor was constantly emitting an icy aura, stimulating his meridians and muscles, and subtly strengthening his body. This ice hornless armor not only had a strong defense, but also had the effect of strengthening the body and refreshing the mind. It was very beneficial for cultivation. The 10 million taels of silver he had spent to buy the ice hornless armor was worth it. The next morning, Ji Tianxing had just woken up and washed up when there was a knock on the door. He opened the door and saw that the person knocking on the door was Nya Hao. Nya Hao walked into the room and cupped his hands in greeting towards Ji Tianxing. He then smiled and said, I've disturbed Brother Ji so early in the morning. Please don't take offense. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he took out a stack of banknotes from his sleeve and returned them to Ji Tianxing with both hands. Brother Ji, thank you for helping me out last night. I knew that you were leaving Fengyang City today, so I asked my subordinates to gather 10 million taels overnight. Ji Tianxing was a little surprised. He didn't expect Nya Hao to be in such a hurry to return the money. He could see that Nya Hao owed him a favor, so he felt a little uneasy. Therefore, he accepted the banknotes and said with concern, Brother Nya, that 10,000 spirit jade pillow is a hot potato. You have to deal with it as soon as possible. Nya Hao smiled and said, Thank you for your concern, Brother Ji. I already asked the guards to send it home last night. The two of them chatted for a while more before Nya Hao cupped his hands and bid farewell. After breakfast, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku left the inn and continued on their journey. After the carriage left Fengyang City, it continued to rush towards the north. Fengyang City was located at the southern border of Hengchuan country, while the Star Ancient Realm was located at the northern border of Hengchuan country. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku had to cross the entire Hengchuan country. They had to travel for 6 days before they could leave the country. The journey was quite peaceful, and there were no twists and turns. After 6 days, Ji Tianxing and the others left Hengchuan country. At noon the next day, the carriage finally arrived at the entrance of the Star Ancient Realm. The Star Ancient Realm was a mysterious and wonderful place. It was said that it was a special space opened up by an ancient almighty. It was extremely vast, and its territory was comparable to half a country. The entrance was on a mountain peak that was 3,000 meters tall. It was impossible for ordinary people to find it. The two carriages stopped at the foot of the mountain. There was no road ahead. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku alighted from the carriage and stood on the grass, looking up at the mountain peak in front of them. The accompanying coachmen and guards carried their luggage down from the carriage. Originally, the guards were going to help Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku carry their luggage and send them to the Sky Pillar sect before returning to Qingyan country. However, Ji Tianxing told them to return, and there was no need to send them back. After the carriage left, only Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku were left on the grass. There are also 4 large boxes containing their luggage. Ji Ku looked at the luggage and couldn't help but worry. Big brother Tianxing, what should we do with these luggage? Do we have to carry them and climb the mountain? There's no need for that. Ji Tianxing smiled and took out his 100 treasures brocade pouch to put the luggage inside. All right, we should go into the mountain. After saying that, he led Ji Ku into the mountain. Ji Ku saw him wave his hand, and the 4 boxes disappeared. She immediately widened her eyes in surprise. She hurriedly chased after Ji Tianxing and held his arm to ask him how he did it. Ji Tianxing explained the wonderful use of the 100 treasures brocade pouch to her. She suddenly understood and praised it. 2 hours later, the 2 of them followed the bluestone path in the mountain and climbed to the peak of the mountain. There was a wide platform at the peak of the mountain. The ground was paved with black boulders. The boulders on the ground were mottled with the vicissitudes of life. It was unknown how long they had been etched by wind and frost. There were ravines and lines carved on the boulders. There were many crisscrossing strange lines that formed a huge array. Around the array, there were 12 young cultivators wearing blue robes and carrying swords on their backs. These people were all at the mystic enlightening realm. Their eyes shone brightly, and their bodies exuded confidence and arrogance. Ji Tianxing glanced at them. These people's robes were of the same style and had the same pattern embroidered on their chests. There were 2 crossed swords in the pattern and a circle of stars around them. It was obviously the symbol of the Sky Pillar sect. He immediately understood that these 12 young cultivators were disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. They were ordered to guard the entrance of the ancient star realm. Sure enough, the leading young cultivator walked over and asked in a dignified voice, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku quickly took out their identity tokens and presented them to the young cultivator. "Senior Martial Brother, we are new disciples who have just entered the Sky Pillar sect. These are our identity tokens." The young cultivator took the 2 tokens and looked at them. His expression eased slightly. He nodded and said, "So it's new junior martial brothers and sisters. Wait a moment. When I open the entrance to the ancient realm, you can enter. There will be other senior martial brothers inside to receive you." Chapter 94. A moment later, the 12 Sky Pillar sect disciples joined forces to open the array at the entrance of the ancient realm. In the middle of the array, an oval-shaped door of white light appeared out of thin air. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku cupped their hands and thanked the disciples before stepping into the door of white light. Whoosh! The 2 of them only saw a white light flash in front of their eyes before they arrived in another world. Beneath their feet was a path paved with dark brown stone slabs. The slabs were mottled with traces of the vicissitudes of time. On both sides of the path was a green grassland with many small flowers of various colors, attracting many bees and butterflies to fly back and forth. Further away was a lush forest, as well as an endless stretch of mountains. The sun was shining brightly in the dark blue sky, but there wasn't the slightest bit of heat in the air. Instead, there was a cool breeze blowing, and there was a refreshing fragrance in the air. This was the Star Ancient Realm, a cultivation holy land that was like a paradise. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku both felt their pores open just by standing in the Star Ancient Realm. They felt indescribably comfortable and refreshed. At this moment, 2 young martial artists wearing blue robes walked in front of the 2 of them. The 2 young warriors cupped their hands and said calmly, "You 2 should be new junior brothers and junior sisters, right?" Ji Tianxing knew that these 2 were the disciples of the Sky Pillar sect, so he smiled and nodded. The 2 disciples looked at their identity tokens and led them towards the distant mountain. "Junior brother, junior sister, please follow us." Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku hurriedly followed the 2 disciples and walked forward along the black stone path. The black stone path was actually more than 20 miles long. It followed the foot of several mountains and connected to a mountain peak that was 3,000 meters tall. This mountain peak was the head of the surrounding mountains. Not only was it the highest, but it also had the most majestic aura and the densest heaven-earth yuan qi. Without a doubt, this mountain peak was where the Sky Pillar sect was located. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up. They were immediately shocked by the majestic atmosphere of the Sky Pillar sect. At the foot of the mountain was a huge square with a radius of nearly 10,000 meters. On both sides stood 99 white stone pillars that reached the sky. A huge staircase that was 20 meters wide extended from the foot of the mountain to the middle of the mountain. The dark green stone steps exuded an ancient aura. It was unknown how many years of wind and frost had been etched on it. The two disciples led Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku along the stone steps to the middle of the mountain. As they walked, they introduced the Sky Pillar sect situation to the two. Junior brother, junior sister, being able to stand out from your respective countries and enter our Sky Pillar sect is the greatest fortune of your lives. Our Sky Pillar sect has been established for 1,000 years. It is the #1 sect in the Heavenly Stellar region and governs the 10 countries of the Heavenly Stellar region. Our sect's disciples are respected beyond compare no matter which country they go to. Jiku saw that the two disciples' attitudes were relatively friendly, so she asked, "Senior brothers, our Sky Pillar sect occupies an entire mountain. Isn't there a lot of disciples in the sect?" One of the disciples smiled and explained, "Junior sister, our Sky Pillar sect doesn't just occupy this mountain peak. This Sky Pillar peak is only where our sect is located." The other disciple added, "Behind this Sky Pillar peak, there are 8 connected peaks. All of them are our Sky Pillar sect's territory." According to the senior brothers in the sect founder used these 9 peaks as the foundation to construct a mountain-protecting formation called Sky Pillar to protect the entire sect. At this point, the two disciples revealed a look of yearning, and their eyes were also surging with pride. Clearly, they were proud to be disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku were also shocked and revealed expressions of disbelief. If the 9 peaks are connected, doesn't that mean it exceeds a radius of 100 miles? Our sect's founder can actually use the 9 peaks as the foundation to set up a great formation. Heavens! The sect founder actually had such a remarkable method. It's simply like a legend. The two disciples nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "That's for sure. Otherwise, how could our Sky Pillar sect become the #1 sect in the Heavenly Sky region?" The 4 of them chatted as they walked and unknowingly arrived at the mountainside. At the end of the stone steps was a huge mountain gate that was 100 meters tall. It was completely built with black boulders. The words Sky Pillar sect were engraved on the lintel of the mountain gate. Every word was written with iron and silver hooks. The strokes were swift and fierce, revealing a vigorous and domineering aura. Under the mountain gate, on the left and right sides of the stone steps, stood 18 young disciples in white robes. Ji Tianxing silently sensed and discovered that every disciple had the strength of the mystic comprehending realm. Mystic comprehending realm disciples have to guard the mountain gate in the Sky Pillar sect. He was somewhat shocked and felt that the Sky Pillar sect's deep foundation was even more unfathomable. After everyone crossed the mountain gate, they arrived at a huge square. This square had a radius of 1,000 meters, and the ground was paved with white stone slabs. It was flat and clean. Many young male and female disciples were walking through the square. All of them were in a hurry and did not linger. On the left and right sides of the square, there were many tall buildings and courtyards that were stacked on top of each other. They stretched as far as the eye could see. The two disciples stopped in the square and introduced the situation to Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku. "Junior brother, junior sister, this is the outer sect's meeting square. Usually, important matters or gatherings in the outer sect will be held here. The buildings on the left and right sides of the square are the residences of the outer sect disciples. There are more than 2,000 outer sect disciples in total. The palaces and houses on the mountain peak are the residences of the inner sect disciples and deacons. Normally, you must not enter without permission. Otherwise, you will be punished." After a brief introduction of the situation, The two disciples led Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku to the courtyard on the right side of the square. The induction ceremony will be held in 3 days. Today, I will take you to the new blue courtyard to stay temporarily. After the induction ceremony, you will be assigned a residence. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku followed the two disciples and entered a courtyard called the new blue courtyard. There were hundreds of rooms in the new blue courtyard. There were already 70 to 80 people living in them. Only 20 or so rooms were still empty. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku chose 2 adjacent rooms to stay in. After they packed their luggage, they settled down temporarily. The new blue courtyard was specially designed to settle down new disciples. The 100 new disciples from the 10 countries of the Tianshan region were temporarily staying here, waiting for the induction ceremony in 3 days. In the next 2 days, more than 20 people were successively led to the new blue courtyard. The 100 new disciples had finally arrived. These 100 people were all young geniuses from various countries. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they were all handsome and dignified. During these 3 days, everyone stayed in their rooms to rest. Very few people showed their faces in public. Chapter 95. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Today was the day of the induction ceremony for the new disciples. Early in the morning, the hundreds of new disciples in New Blue Courtyard had finished washing up and were ready. When the sun rose from the east, an outer sect deacon entered New Blue Courtyard and issued an order in a dignified voice. All new disciples are to gather in the courtyard immediately and await the arrival of the outer sect elders and deacons of the 3 courtyards. The outer sect deacon's voice spread throughout New Blue Courtyard, and the new disciples in the hundreds of rooms immediately opened their doors and gathered in the courtyard. Although they were all young geniuses of various countries and had distinguished statuses, they were still arrogant. When they arrived at the Sky Pillar sect, they restrained their arrogance and did not dare to be negligent. Especially today, when they were about to hold the induction ceremony, they did not dare to leave the slightest bad impression on the outer sect elders and deacons. In just a short span of 100 breaths, the hundreds of new disciples stood in the courtyard and waited respectfully. Not long after, a white-haired old man in purple robes entered New Blue Courtyard with 3 middle-aged deacons in black robes. Everyone could see that the dignified old man in purple robes was the outer sect elder. And among the 3 middle-aged deacons, Ji Tianxing recognized one of them. Han Xiaosheng. Han Xiaosheng was the one who presided over the entrance competition in the imperial city of Green Cloud. The outer sect elder walked to the center of the courtyard and stood on the high platform in the north, looking down at the new disciples. After sizing up everyone, he nodded slightly, revealing a satisfied expression, and opened his mouth to speak. I am Chu Huaishan, an outer sect elder in charge of more than 2,400 outer sect disciples and all outer sect matters. You are all young geniuses of various countries. Perhaps some of you have outstanding talent, some of you have extraordinary backgrounds, and some of you have great wealth. But no matter what, you are all outer sect disciples of the Sky Pillar sect now that you have entered our sect. All the fame and fortune in the secular world are useless here. You can only rely on your talent and hard work. You only have one thing to do, and that is to become stronger. Become stronger. Only those with outstanding talent and great strength are qualified to be nurtured and valued by the sect. As for those who are unmotivated or untalented, they will be demoted to odd jobs or expelled from the sect. Chu Huaishan's voice was like a resounding bell, striking the hearts of everyone present. His tone was sonorous and powerful. Moreover, it was filled with an inspiring force that caused the blood of over 100 new disciples to boil. At the same time, his short words revealed the laws of the Sky Pillar sect and the martial Tao world. Survival of the fittest. Only with great strength could one be nurtured and respected by others. After that, Chu Huaishan personally presided over the initiation ceremony. After a simple but dignified ceremony, the hundreds of new disciples were officially accepted into the sect. Chu Huaishan announced loudly, "The outer sect is divided into 3 courtyards the White Dew Courtyard, the River Flow Courtyard, and the Wind and Cloud Courtyard. According to your ranking in the entrance competition, those who ranked 5th to 10th will enter the White Dew Academy to learn cultivation. The 2nd to 4th places will enter the Jianglu Academy to study and cultivate. Only the number 1 disciple of each country can enter the Tempest Courtyard. Next, the deacons of the 3 courtyards will distribute the spoils. After saying that, Chu Huaishan left the new blue courtyard. The hundreds of new disciples in the courtyard all understood Chu Huaishan's meaning, and their expressions were somewhat complicated. It was obvious that the treatment and training that ordinary disciples received when they entered the White Dew Courtyard would definitely be the most ordinary. Only the disciples with excellent aptitude could enter the Jianglu Academy to cultivate and receive better treatment. As for the Tempest Courtyard, only the number 1 genius of each country could enter and would receive the best treatment and training. The outer sect was divided into 3 courtyards. The disciples were divided into 3 classes according to their aptitude and talent, and received different treatment and training. From this point alone, it could be seen that the competition within the Sky Pillar sect was fierce and the hierarchy was strict. The first person to ascend the platform was a deacon of the White Dew Courtyard. This person held the register and read out the names of 60 new disciples in a row. The 60 new disciples, including Ji Ku, walked out of the crowd and gathered in front of the platform. After the deacon finished reading the register, he led the 60 people to leave the new blue courtyard and head to the White Dew Courtyard. The number of people in the courtyard suddenly decreased by more than half. The deacon of the Jianglu Courtyard ascended the platform again and read out the names of 29 people with the register. These 29 people included Jian Wuxing and Wei Lingfeng. But what puzzled Ji Tianxing was that the name of the young prince, Ji Ling, wasn't there. A moment later, the deacon of the Jianglu Courtyard left with the 29 disciples. Only Ji Tianxing and the 9 new disciples were left in the courtyard, and it became empty. Ji Tianxing and the 9 disciples beside him were obviously going to enter the Tempest Courtyard. But what he didn't understand was that Ji Ling was also among them. What surprised him even more was that when he glanced at the 9 new disciples, he saw an acquaintance. The young man he met by chance in Fengyang City, the grandson of Marshal Qinquan, Nie Hao. Ji Tianxing immediately understood. When he met Nie Hao in Fengyang City, Nie Hao also came to the Sky Pillar sect to report. It was just that neither of them mentioned entering the Sky Pillar sect, so they didn't know that the other party was a new disciple of the Sky Pillar sect. Nie Hao must be first place in Mao Ronggua's competition, so he stayed in the courtyard and waited to enter the Tempest Courtyard. When Ji Tianxing and Nie Hao separated in Fengyang City, he thought that they would never see each other again. He didn't expect to meet Nie Hao again in the Sky Pillar sect. Moreover, both of them were first place in their respective countries and were going to enter the Tempest Courtyard to cultivate at the same time. Ji Tianxing sighed inwardly. Fate was really wonderful. Nie Hao also saw him and was stunned for a moment. Then, he revealed a smile and nodded to him. At this time, the deacon of the Tempest Courtyard ascended the platform and calmly looked at everyone. He said, "I am Han Xiuxing, the deacon of the Tempest Courtyard. From now on, the 10 of you will enter the Tempest Courtyard, and I will teach you." Everyone bowed to Han Xiuxing and respectfully said, "Disciple greets Deacon Han." Han Xiuxing nodded slightly and motioned for everyone to get up. He calmly explained, "Among the 10 of you, 9 are the number 1 geniuses of their respective countries, except for Ji Ling. Lu Mingyang, the number 1 of Changfeng country, broke through to the mystic comprehending realm in the entrance competition. Therefore, after he entered the sect, he directly entered the inner sect to cultivate. The vacant spot will be filled by Ji Ling." After Han Xiuxing explained, Ji Tianxing suddenly realized. However, he secretly guessed that there was another reason why Ji Ling was allowed to fill this spot instead of the second place of another country. It was very likely that Ji Ling was the person the Sky Pillar sect was looking for, so there was such preferential treatment. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing secretly clenched his fists and murmured in his heart, I didn't expect that Ji Ling would enter the Tempest courtyard with me and cultivate together in the future. In that case, I will cultivate diligently and ruthlessly trample him under my feet. Chapter 96. Han Xiaoxing was still on the platform, explaining the rules of the Tempest courtyard as well as the generous treatment everyone would receive. Ji Tianxing recalled what Han Xiaoxing had said before and frowned slightly. That was because he heard a familiar name. Lu Mingyang. He clearly remembered that at that time, in Fengyang City, the handsome youth who wanted to strike up a conversation with Ji Ku and kill him on the street for his treasure was called Lu Mingyang. If it wasn't a coincidence, then this was definitely bad news. He and Ye Hao had both offended Lu Mingyang. Not only was Lu Mingyang the crown prince of Chongfeng Nation, but he was also an inner disciple of the Sky-Bearing sect. In the future, everyone would be in the Sky-Bearing sect and would meet sooner or later. Ji Tianxing didn't doubt that with Lu Mingyang's despicable and shameless personality, he would definitely retaliate against him and Ye Hao. Although he wasn't afraid of trouble, this was undoubtedly a potential threat and trouble. Thinking of this, he turned his head and glanced at Ye Hao not far away. Ye Hao was also looking at him with a strange look in his eyes and expression. Clearly, Ye Hao had also realized this problem. Not long after, Han Xiaoxing finished speaking and led Ji Tianxing and the others out of the courtyard, heading towards the Tempest courtyard in the outer sect. The Tempest courtyard had a special position in the outer sect as it specialized in cultivating genius disciples. Therefore, the Tempest courtyard was located halfway up the mountain on the left side of the conference square. It was a spacious and quiet courtyard. Ji Tianxing, Ye Hao, and the others were led by Han Xiaoxing out of the new blue courtyard and through the conference square. At this time, there were many young disciples gathered in groups of 2s and 3s in the conference square, sizing up the new disciples, especially Ji Tianxing, Ye Hao, and the others. They were all geniuses who wanted to enter the Tempest courtyard and were more eye-catching than ordinary new disciples. In the corner of the square stood a young disciple wearing a white robe. This person was tall and sturdy with a handsome and resolute face, but his eyes were as cold as ice as he stared at Ji Tianxing in the crowd. Seeing Ji Tianxing following behind Han Xiaoxing, crossing the square and heading in the direction of the storm courtyard, his eyes surged with dense killing intent. He secretly clenched his fists and roared with grief and indignation in his heart. Ji Tianxing. Today was supposed to be the day I reunited with my cousin. I waited for her in the Sky Pillar sect for 3 years. You bastard! How dare you kill my cousin? I will never let you off. Thinking of this, the beautiful figure of his cousin Ling Yunfei appeared in his mind, and his eyes surged with deep sorrow and anger. After a long time, when Ji Tianxing and the others left the square, the burly young man still stood there, unwilling to leave. At this moment, an inner disciple who was also wearing a white robe walked up to him and greeted him with a smile. Senior Marshal Brother Jianyu, why did you come to the outer sect? What are you looking at? The tall and sturdy young man named Jianyu came back to his senses and restrained the grief and anger in his eyes. He glanced at the disciple beside him and said calmly, There are new disciples today, so I came to take a look. Jianyu gave a perfunctory reply, then turned around and left. Han Xiaoxing led Ji Tianxing and the others into the storm courtyard. They passed through the spacious courtyard and entered the conference hall. In the magnificent conference hall, there was already a black-robed deacon waiting for them. After Han Xiaoxing's introduction, everyone learned that this black-robed deacon was called Du Wu. He was Han Xiaoxing's deputy and also the second instructor of the storm courtyard. From now on, the learning and cultivation of Ji Tianxing, Ye Hao, and the others will be taught by Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu. After everyone greeted Du Wu, he took out 10 sets of green robes and books that he had prepared beforehand and distributed them to everyone. The 10 sets of green robes were everyone's disciple uniforms. The 10 books were the Sky Pillar Sect's entry cultivation method, the Green Pine Tactic. Ji Tianxing understood one thing from his previous observation. In the Sky Pillar sect, those who wore green robes were outer sect disciples. Those who wore white robes were inner sect disciples. and those who wore black robes were deacons. Different colored robes represented different identities, and they could not be worn carelessly. This made him sigh in his heart. As expected of an ancient sect with thousands of years of history, there were too many rules and regulations. Next, Duwu distributed everyone's living quarters. The storm courtyard was spacious, occupying a radius of 1,000 meters. The courtyard was almost as big as the G residence, and there were over 100 rooms for people to live in. Thus, each of the 10 disciples was assigned an individual room. Moreover, each room was equipped with a secret cultivation room. This was a treatment that ordinary disciples did not have. After everyone settled down, they changed into green robes and gathered in the conference hall. After everyone had gathered, Han Xiuxing solemnly announced something. Everyone, our storm courtyard is the #1 outer sect courtyard. We only nurture the most talented martial artists. Currently, there are only 10 of you in the storm courtyard. You have the best resources and treatment, but you also have to bear the heaviest tasks and pressure. There is still half a year before the inner sect examination. Your first task is to reach the mystic comprehending realm within half a year and pass the inner sect examination to become an inner sect disciple. The inner sect examination is held once every 2 years. If you miss the examination in half a year, you'll have to wait for another 2 years. After hearing Han Xiuxing's words, Ji Tianxing, Nie Hao, and the rest expressions changed, and they all frowned. Obviously, this task was too difficult, causing everyone to feel a great deal of pressure. Nie Hao hesitated for a moment, then cupped his hands and bowed to Han Xiuxing. He asked, "Deacon Han, although the 10 of us are the champions of each country's large competition, everyone's strength is around the 7th level of the true energy realm. How can we reach the mystic comprehending realm in half a year?" Han Xiuxing nodded slightly and said calmly, "What Nie Hao said should be the same question in all of your hearts, right?" Everyone nodded in agreement. They all felt that this was an impossible task. Han Xiuxing's gaze swept across the crowd, and he revealed a playful smile. To reach the mystic comprehending realm from the 7th level of the true energy realm in half a year, this is indeed an impossible task for ordinary disciples. But the 10 of you are the champions of each country's large competition, and in this half a year, you have cultivated in the storm courtyard and received the best treatment and guidance. If you still can't reach the mystic comprehending realm, then it proves that you are mediocre. You are not worthy of the sect's nurturing and guidance. Hearing these words, everyone lowered their heads slightly, and a trace of shame appeared in their eyes. At the same time, everyone clenched their fists and secretly swore in their hearts that no matter what, they would complete the task and reach the mystic comprehending realm in half a year. Han Xiuxing revealed a gratified smile when he saw that they were not depressed, but instead had their fighting spirit aroused. After half a year, the storm courtyard will be closed and no longer teach disciples. At that time, those disciples who have not reached the mystic comprehending realm and have not passed the intersect examination will be sent to the Jianglu courtyard to continue cultivating. Those who are sent to the Jianglu courtyard will have to bear the criticism and ridicule of the other disciples. You can consider it yourselves. Therefore, I hope that the 10 of you can reach the mystic comprehending realm and pass the examination to become intersect disciples. Not only that, in this half a year, you will have a monthly examination every month. The contents of the monthly examination are also what you need to learn during the month. Chapter 97. It was noon, and the sun was blazing high in the sky. The air was hot and dry, and it was easy to get sleepy. However, Ji Tianxing, Nie Hao, and the others couldn't go back to their rooms to rest. They all stood in the meeting hall and listened to Han Xiuxing's teachings. Han Xiuxing sat at the head of the hall and spoke with a solemn expression. The cultivation of the martial way is mainly based on martial skills and cultivation methods, but also needs to be supplemented by the Tao of pills, the Tao of formations, and the Tao of forging. This is very similar to alchemy. It's also very particular about a ruler, a minister, and an assistant. There must be a main ingredient and auxiliary ingredient complementing each other in order to successfully refine an elixir. Therefore, Your mission this month is to learn how to refine elixirs. I don't expect all of you to be proficient in alchemy and become alchemy masters in the future. However, you must know how to refine elixirs, which will be very helpful to your martial cultivation in the future. Your mission this month is to refine the spirit-nourishing elixir, green jade elixir, and heart-nourishing elixir with your own hands. These 3 elixirs are all top-grade, origin-level elixirs. When the time comes, whoever can refine the highest grade elixir will receive an extra reward. Hearing these 2 sentences, Ji Tianxing, Nia Hao, and the others all showed a difficult expression and felt a great deal of pressure. They had never learned alchemy and only had a superficial understanding of alchemy. Top-grade, origin-level elixirs could only be refined by experts above the 7th level of the true energy realm. Moreover, it would take at least a year of study and experimentation to refine them. Even if they were martial geniuses, to learn alchemy and refine the 3 top-grade, origin-level elixirs in a month was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, among the 10, there were 2 disciples who smiled confidently and seemed to have a card up their sleeves. One of them was skinny and short, and his age was similar to Ji Tianxing's. This person was called Shi Jingsheng, born in a family of alchemy in the spiritual mountain country. At a young age, he had great attainments in alchemy and had refined several top-grade, origin-level elixirs. The other person was tall and sturdy, with skin as dark as charcoal. A pair of bell-sized eyes flashed with a fierce light. This person was called Emo, from the imperial family of the Blackwater country. He had been interested in alchemy since childhood and had a certain foundation in alchemy. Han Xiaoxing's eyes were like torches. Of course, Shi Jingxing and Emo's faces couldn't escape his eyes. He glanced at the 2 of them and said with a smile, Shi Jingxing, Emo, it seems that both of you have a foundation in alchemy, so you don't feel any pressure from this task. However, I want to tell you that the spirit-nourishing pill, azure jade pill, and heart-nourishing pill that you want to refine are all secret pills of my sky-bearing sect. They are different from the pills of the mortal kingdoms. Even if the 2 of you have a foundation in alchemy and have a higher chance of winning than the others, you still have to study and comprehend diligently. Shi Jingxing and Emo restrained their complacent expressions, hurriedly cupped their fists and saluted, saying, "We will follow Deacon Han's instructions." Subsequently, Han Xiaoxing had Du Wu take out 10 thick ancient books and distributed them to Ji Tianxing and the others. The black ancient book was very heavy. It was as thick as a brick, and the words "Thousand Medicine Collection" were written on the cover. Han Xiaoxing said in a deep voice, "If you want to learn alchemy, you must first learn how to recognize herbs. Your first week's task is to memorize the 3,000 herbs in this 1,000 medicine collection. There is a spirit medicine garden in the back mountain. If you want to quickly recognize herbs, you can use your identity token to go to the spirit medicine garden to study. However, you must not pick a single blade of grass or flower. Otherwise, you will be punished by the sect's rules." After saying this, Han Xiaoxing had everyone withdraw and do their own things. The rules of the Tempest Courtyard were as such. Other than when the 2 deacons were teaching or when there was an announcement, everyone had to gather in the main hall. At other times, the disciples could do as they pleased. As long as they didn't violate the sect's rules or barge into forbidden areas, no one would interfere. Of course, Han Xiaoxing had just announced this month's goal and this week's learning content. Everyone knew that the task was difficult and felt heavy pressure. How could they dare to waste time? Ji Tianxing and Nia Hao walked out of the main hall side by side. After exchanging a few words in the courtyard, they returned to their rooms to study. Ji Ling was the last to walk out of the main hall. As he walked, he asked Han Xiaoxing about his experience in alchemy. Han Xiaoxing's attitude towards him was very amiable and answered all his questions. After Ji Ling obtained a satisfactory answer, he cupped his hands and thanked Han Xiaoxing before returning to his room. After Ji Tianxing returned to his room, he didn't pay attention to what was happening outside. He held the 1,000 medicine collection and earnestly read it. The afternoon unknowingly passed by. At dusk, several odd-job disciples carried food boxes into the Tempest courtyard to deliver dinner to the 10 disciples. The Tempest courtyard's disciples were treated well. This could be seen from the ingredients for dinner. Although there wasn't much for dinner, there's only a bowl of rice, a bowl of meat dishes, and a can of meat soup. However, these ingredients were very precious. They were spirit rice produced in the Sky Pillar Sect spirit fields and the meat of monster beasts raised in the beast garden. Eating these meals every day that contained origin chi could quickly strengthen a cultivator's physique and imperceptibly increase their strength. The odd-job disciple that delivered the food to Ji Tianxing was a 12 or 13-year-old boy. He was thin and pale, but he looked quite clever. The boy's name was Xiaofeng. When he first met Ji Tianxing, he was somewhat reserved, as if he was afraid of this genius disciple of the Tempest courtyard. Ji Tianxing had a friendly look on his face as he chatted with him for a while. Only then did he know what was going on. It turned out that odd-job disciples had a very low status in the Sky Pillar sect. They were all treated as servants by the official disciples. In particular, some genius disciples looked down on the odd-job disciples. They would scold and beat them up if they felt the slightest disrespect. Xiaofeng once delivered food to a certain Tempest courtyard disciple. He only coughed a few times while eating and was beaten half to death by that disciple. He was bedridden for half a month. If odd-job disciples wanted to have dignity and freedom, there were only two paths they could take. They could either reach the 5th level of the true element realm and pass the outer disciple exam to become an outer disciple, or they could do 10 years of hard labor. When the 10 years were up, they would be expelled from the Sky Pillar sect and return to the mortal world. In short, there were many rules in the Sky Pillar sect. The strong and the weak could be seen everywhere. The strong were respected and the weak were lowly. After eating dinner, Ji Tianxing felt that his essence chi was abundant. There was surging origin chi in his body. He entered the secret cultivation room, activated the spirit gathering array in the secret cultivation room, and began to cultivate. After a night of cultivation, he felt that his cultivation had increased by a bit the next morning. The sword embryo in his body had also grown a bit stronger. The treatment at the Tempest courtyard is really good. The ingredients are of a higher grade than what I ate at the G residence. The effects are also several times stronger. Although I'm only at the 5th level of the true element realm, at this speed, I might be able to reach the profound comprehension realm within half a year. After Ji Tianxing finished cultivating, he calculated in his mind. He was filled with confidence and anticipation for the next half a year of cultivation. Yesterday, I looked through the 1,000 medicine collection. Although I memorized several hundred types of herbs, I didn't see the real thing. In the end, my memory isn't deep. Today, I'm going to the Spirit Herb Garden. I need to compare the herbs to deepen my memory. Chapter 98. The sun rose from the east and shone warm sunlight on the Sky Pillar Peak. Early in the morning, when Ji Tianxing walked out of his room, he saw that there were already a few disciples in the courtyard. Some were reading the 1,000 medicine collection under the gazebo or under the tree, while others were practicing their sword techniques in the courtyard. There were also some who were sitting on the roof in a meditative posture, breathing and cultivating the essence energy of heaven and earth. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but smile playfully. After all, they're all young people who are the top geniuses of the various nations. They all have different personalities and some strange hobbies. Yesterday, everyone just joined the sect and was still rather reserved. Now that they've settled down and understood the rules of the sect, they've all become more relaxed. He muttered a few words in his heart and walked out of the wind cloud courtyard with the 1,000 medicine collection, heading to the spiritual herbal garden at the back of the mountain. It was a full 5 kilometers from the wind cloud courtyard to the spiritual herbal garden at the back of the mountain, and there were tree-lined paths along the way. Ji Tianxing walked on the tree-lined path and would occasionally encounter some outer or inner sect disciples. The disciples walked in groups of 2s and 3s, discussing the essence of martial arts, the mysteries of pills, and so on. When he passed by a combat arena at the back of the mountain, he saw 2 inner sect disciples of the mystic mastery realm sparring on the stage. Even without using weapons, the fight was very exciting. There was a circle of disciples around the combat arena who were all watching the sparring. From time to time, some of them would discuss a few words, seemingly having comprehended some tricks. Although Ji Tianxing had only joined the sect for 2 days, he could feel the strong learning and competitive atmosphere in the sect through what he had seen and heard in the past 2 days. After all, the young elites of the 10 nations were gathered in the Sky Pillar sect, where there were many geniuses and powerhouses. Everyone wanted to fly to the 9 heavens and become a martial arts powerhouse that everyone respected, who would be willing to crawl in the mud and be humiliated and looked down upon by others. The entrance of the spiritual herbal garden was not only protected by an array formation, but there were also 8 inner sect disciples of the mystic mastery realm guarding it. Ji Tianxing walked to the gate and showed his identity token before being allowed to enter. He carried the 1,000 medicine collection and crossed the gate. As soon as he entered the spiritual herbal garden, he smelled the fragrance of various plants, flowers, and fruits. There were all kinds of flowers, fruits, and trees planted all over the mountains. They were all spiritual herbs and miraculous herbs. Usually, there were disciples in charge of taking care of the spiritual herbal garden, and the various herbs in the garden were planted according to their categories. There was a 2-meter-tall stone tablet erected at the edge of each nursery, and there were names of various medicinal herbs. Medicinal collection, and medicinal herbs, 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 and would stop and observe them for a long time. Medicinal herbs, and the herbs, and medicinal herbs, and the herbs, and the herbs of the mystic realm. Of the mystic medicines, mystic heavens, and in my mystic realm was mystic myung, was mystic stick, pillar, mystic garden, mystic realm, my mystic realm. Mystic, my mystic realm, mystic and mystic garden, mystic of the mystic garden, my mystic. The mission that Deacon Han gave us was to memorize more than 3,000 types of medicinal herbs within a week, and to be able to tell the characteristics and effects of each medicinal herb. At my current speed, I can only identify 600 herbs a day. In a week, I can barely identify 3,000 herbs, but I might not be able to remember all of them. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing frowned and was a little worried. He closed the 1,000 medicine collection and prepared to find a place to sit down and rest for a while. He sized up his surroundings a few times before realizing that he had unknowingly arrived at the depths of the medicinal garden. He was currently at the side of a jade lake surrounded by willows. The surface of the lake was wide, and the clear, dark green water rippled as a cool breeze blew. The lakeside was filled with tall, green willow trees. Thousands of green willow branches hung down and swayed gently with the breeze, like the slender hands of a young girl, gently fiddling with the lake water. Such a delightful scene made Ji Tianxing's mood much better, and his mind much more relaxed. He carried the 1,000 medicine collection to the lakeside and was about to sit down on a stone bench under a willow tree to rest. At this time, he suddenly saw a young girl in a green dress standing under the willow tree next to him. The young girl's back was graceful, and her green dress fluttered gently with the breeze. She looked particularly pure and beautiful. Even if he couldn't see the young girl's face, Ji Tianxing could guess that she must be a gentle beauty just by looking at her slim back. The young girl was staring at the lake, as if she was thinking or remembering something. Suddenly, she heard Ji Tianxing's footsteps. She came back to her senses and turned to look at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing and her eyes met. He immediately saw her face and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Just as he had imagined, the young girl in the green dress had a pure and beautiful face, and her white and translucent skin was sparkling and translucent like jade. Under the neat bangs covering her forehead, there was a pair of willow leaf eyebrows and a pair of big watery eyes, which were as clear as the lake water. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, but she was not cold and arrogant. Instead, she was very gentle and demure, and had a kind of delicate temperament. Ji Tianxing didn't know why, but the young girl in the green dress made him feel a sense of closeness from the bottom of his heart, and he also had a desire to protect her. She was not as cold and arrogant as Yun Yao, who was otherworldly and could only be seen from afar. After Ji Tianqing came back to his senses, he bowed to the young girl in the green dress and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I'm just passing by and want to sit down and rest for a while. If I've disturbed you, please forgive me, Junior." Junior sister. When it came to addressing her, he hesitated. The young girl in the green dress was neither a green-robed outer disciple nor a white-robed inner disciple, which made it difficult for Ji Tianqing to distinguish her identity. Seeing that she was young, he could only call her junior sister. The young girl in the green dress nodded slightly and showed a touch of a smile. She was very gentle. "It's okay. I'm just here to relax. It's not disturbing." After that, she glanced at the 1,000 medicine collection in Ji Tianqing's hand and asked with a smile, "Are you an outer disciple who came to the medicine garden to learn to identify herbs?" Ji Tianqing nodded and answered truthfully, "My name is Ji Tianqing, and I'm a new disciple who just entered the sect. I'm taught by Deacon Han, and I'm here to learn the way of alchemy." The two chatted under the willow tree and exchanged names. The young girl in the green dress was called Xian Xian. She claimed that everyone usually called her junior sister, so Ji Tianqing changed the way he addressed her as junior sister Xian Xian. Xian Xian did not reveal her identity and also tacitly agreed to this name. Through the conversation, Ji Tianqing learned that Xian Xian used to learn alchemy under Han Xiaoxing's tutelage. In order to memorize the herbs in the 1,000 medicine collection, she also came to the medicine garden to learn every day. Later, she came to the medicine garden many times and liked this place with pleasant scenery. She often came to the lake to relax or stare blankly. It was unknown whether it was Xian Xian's personality or some other reason, but she seemed to have a sense of closeness with Ji Tianqing. After the two chatted for a while, she actually took the initiative to help Ji Tianqing learn to identify herbs. After all, she could recite the 1,000 medicine collection backwards, and she knew the thousands of herbs in the medicine garden like the back of her hand. She could casually mention the characteristics and effects of any herb. Chapter 99. Since Xian Xian was willing to help him, how could Ji Tianqing refuse? After he bowed and thanked Xian Xian, he followed her around the herb garden and listened to her introduce each and every herb. This dark purple herb is called the purple heart bamboo and is a rare spiritual herb. It needs to grow for 9 years before it can be used to refine pills. It can be used to refine various types of profound pills that can calm the mind. This blue herb is called the ice moon flower and only blooms on the night of the full moon. It is mainly used to refine the ice moon profound pill and can increase one's cultivation. Xian Xian introduced the various herbs as she walked and suddenly saw Ji Tianqing close to a beautiful spiritual flower, and she hurriedly reminded him, "Tianqing, don't touch that bone-dissolving grass. It looks beautiful, but it actually contains poison. If you touch it, it will corrode your flesh and bones." Hearing her gentle voice, Ji Tianqing hurriedly retracted his hand and gave her a grateful smile. Xian Xian continued, "Actually, there are over 3,000 herbs in this herb garden, and many of them are poisonous. Some even contain poison. When you're identifying the herbs in the herb garden, you must not casually touch those herbs. If you're not careful, you will be poisoned and injured." Ji Tianqing nodded his head and memorized every word she said. The two of them walked around the herb garden for an entire afternoon, and with Xian Xian's help, Ji Tianqing memorized over 1,000 herbs. The two of them chatted as they walked, and their relationship became closer and closer, and they had already become friends. When evening came, Xian Xian wanted to return to her residence, and the two of them left the herb garden together. At the entrance of the herb garden, Xian Xian smiled and waved her slender little hand as she bid farewell to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stood on the tree-lined path and watched her figure disappear into the distance. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "It's really strange. I have only known Xian Xian for half a day, and I have already hit it off with her. Seeing her leave, I still feel reluctant. How could this be?" He muttered in his heart as he could not understand. Although Xian Xian was extremely beautiful and had a gentle and graceful personality, he was not someone who was greedy for beauty and did not have any improper thoughts toward Xian Xian. The hazy feeling he had for Xian Xian was more like an older brother wanting to protect his younger sister. At the same time, he had some doubts in his heart and was secretly guessing Xian's identity. Although Xian did not reveal her identity, he could tell that Xian's strength was not ordinary. She was definitely not an outer sanctum disciple, and was most likely an inner sanctum disciple. As for the inner disciples, they had to wear white robes, which was their identity. Unless it was someone with a special identity, one must not wear clothes of different colors. Therefore, Ji Tianxing dared to conclude that Xian was most likely an inner sect disciple with a special identity. Forget it. Let's not think about so much nonsense. Junior sister Xian and I hit it off well, and I just want to be friends with her. Why should I investigate her identity? After letting his imagination run wild for a while, Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and followed the tree-lined path back to the storm courtyard. After he returned to his residence, the odd-job worker Xiao Feng brought him dinner. The amount of dinner was the same as yesterday, but the dishes and meat soup had been changed. After Ji Tianxing finished his dinner, he sat in his room and closed his eyes to rest, preparing to cultivate after calming his heart. However, he sat there for half an hour, and Xian's figure and smiling face appeared in his mind from time to time, making it difficult for him to calm down. He had no choice but to sit in front of the desk by the window, holding the 1,000 medicine collection and carefully reading it, memorizing the contents. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. At this time, it was already the middle of the night, and the storm courtyard was silent. Ji Tianxing was engrossed in reading the book when he suddenly frowned and subconsciously raised his head to look outside the window. His 5 senses were very sharp, and he faintly felt as if there was a pair of eyes secretly watching him. The feeling of being secretly watched made his heart uneasy, making it difficult for him to calm down. He quickly put down the 1,000 medicine collection and reached out to open the window. Swish! In the dark night, outside the window, on the roof not far from him, there was a black shadow flashing. Sure enough, there is someone secretly watching. Ji Tianxing suddenly frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He immediately grabbed the black dragon sword at the head of the bed, jumped out of the window, and ran in the direction of the black shadow. The black shadow waved his hand and shot a cold light at him, and the figure immediately disappeared into the darkness. Whoosh! The cold light made a sharp sound and went straight for Ji Tianxing's face, bringing with it a fierce energy. Ji Tianxing immediately waved his sword to block, and with a ding sound, he blocked the cold light and sent it flying to the ground. At this time, he clearly saw that the cold light was a hidden weapon flying knife. Damn it! You want to sneak attack me? Ji Tianxing secretly cursed, and his heart was full of doubts. He ran out with all his strength, wanting to catch the black shadow and see who wanted to sneak attack him. However, when he chased out of the storm courtyard, he found that the black shadow had disappeared into the forest. Ji Tianxing was unwilling to give up, and he chased into the forest with the black dragon sword, looking around with a sharp gaze. However, after searching for a while, he couldn't find any trace of the black shadow and could only return without success. After returning to his room, he sat on the edge of the bed and pondered with a frown. That person was secretly spying on me, and after I discovered him, he used a hidden weapon to sneak attack me. However, he didn't dare to make a move in the storm courtyard. Clearly, he didn't want to reveal his whereabouts and identity. In that case, this person must be from the Sky Pillar sect, and he is much stronger than me. It is very likely that he is a Tongshan realm expert, but I just arrived at the Sky Pillar sect, and I haven't made any enemies. Who wants to deal with me? Ji Tianxing pondered and analyzed for a long time, but he didn't have a clue. After a quarter of an hour, he calmed down and entered the secret room to cultivate. Yesterday, when he entered the sect, Deacon Du Wu gave each person a book of the green pine art. This was the Sky Pillar sect's entry cultivation technique. Ji Tianxing had studied this cultivation technique and found that it was only a high-grade, origin-level cultivation technique. Although this cultivation technique had been passed down by the Sky Pillar sect for 1,000 years and had been tempered thousands of times, it was already very perfect. If he cultivated this cultivation technique, his martial foundation would be incomparably solid. However, after Ji Tianqing read it, he threw the green pine art aside and had no plans to cultivate it. To him, the path of the sword heart was the most suitable and the most wonderful cultivation technique. He made up his mind to cultivate the third level of the path of the sword heart and strive to reach the Tongxian realm within half a year. The next morning, Ji Tianqing finished cultivating and walked out of the secret room. He had just finished washing up and was about to go to the spirit herb garden to find Xian when he walked out of the room with the 1,000 medicine collection. At that moment, the bell rang in the conference hall. Ji Tianqing stopped and hurriedly rushed to the conference hall with the disciples in the courtyard. After everyone gathered in the conference hall, they saw 3 black-robed deacons standing in the hall. 2 of them were Han Xiuxing and Du Wu. As for the other middle-aged deacon, Ji Tianqing did not recognize him. The unfamiliar deacon's face was a little gloomy, and his eyes were filled with anger as he looked at Ji Tianqing and the others. Everyone felt that the atmosphere was not right, so they stood in the conference hall with a solemn expression and did not dare to make sound. Han Xiuxing's gaze swept across everyone, and he said in a low and serious tone, "The day before yesterday, when I asked you to learn how to identify medicinal herbs, I said that you could enter the spirit herb garden, but you must not pluck a single flower or fruit from the garden. Yesterday, apart from Shi Jingqing and Emo, the other 8 of you entered the spirit herb garden. However, someone violated the sect rules and plucked a white sun fruit without permission. Deacon Mu, who is in charge of the spirit herb garden, is here. If any of you secretly plucked the white sun fruit, stand up and admit your guilt now." Only then did everyone understand what was going on. They looked at the people around them with a puzzled expression, secretly guessing who would steal the herb. Deacon Mu also shouted with a gloomy face, "The white sun fruit is a precious spirit herb. It only blooms once every 10 years and bears fruit once every 20 years. As disciples of the Fengyan Hall, someone actually plucked the white sun fruit without permission. This is a disgrace to the Fengyan Hall. I'll give you a chance. Whoever plucked the white sun fruit, stand up and admit your guilt. I can give you a lighter punishment. Otherwise, when I find you, you will be severely punished." All the disciples looked at each other and whispered in each other's ears, but no one stood up and admitted their guilt. Ji Tianqing was also puzzled, but he looked on quietly, as usual. Seeing that no one took the initiative to admit their guilt, Han Xiuxing ordered, "Deacon Du, accompany Deacon Mu to search the rooms of the 8 disciples." Du nodded and left the conference hall with Deacon Mu to search the rooms. It's a new week. Looking for recommendation tickets and rewards? Please, brothers.